Hey everyone, this is What If Fan bringing you another part of What If Reborn in Naruto World. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Please make sure to support the creator. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, a quick update, the story What If There Was a Different Luffy is going on hold soon, as we have almost caught up with the author. So once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the next project should be on this channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if Ichigo awoke his true powers? What if becoming a mangaka in One Piece world? What if Reborn is Gohan in future timeline? I will be setting up a poll for this, so please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next on the channel. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 26. He knew we were here all along. Shikamaru clicked his tongue. He thought he might have already with that comment about wasting everyone's time, but this just confirmed it. The question though, was just how long had known they were. How troublesome. There really wasn't anything Team 10 could do but obey. Well, they could try to flee, but it was blatantly obvious how that would turn out for them. So, they did as bid, standing up from between the bushes and revealing themselves. "Ah, hey Daiki," Shikamaru greeted him, hiding a grimace, while his mind raced making and discarding plans by the second. "Long time no see." Yeah, you're looking great." Choji nodded vigorously. "You're looking tougher than ever," he praised. Daiki raised an eyebrow at their reactions. "Cloud, Chip," he nodded at Shikamaru and Choji in greeting before his eyes moved over to Ino. 5 out of 10, he greeted her as well. Shikamaru and Choji took the names on the nose. Ino, however. 5 out of 10. She sputtered, jade-like teal eyes widening in outrage, her hand coming up to point at him accusatorily. "I am at least an 8. Nah, on my personal scale that only attractive girls are on, you only rank a 5, Daiki shrugged. "So what brings you guys this way?" Hoping to ambush someone for one of these, he asked as Ino fumed, spinning the earth scroll he took from Amaya just a bit and balancing it on one fingertip. Once again, Shikamaru's eyes widened. That could be a throwaway but... He swallowed. "How did you know we already have a heaven scroll?" the Nara heir asked. Daiki smirked. "Figured you'd catch on," he mused, before pointing to his scarlet red eyes. "Simple really, I watched every single team get their scrolls." "Wait, scarlet red eyes?" "Your eyes, they used to be brown," he noted. "A dujitsu, perhaps something like the Byakugan that could see through solid objects and long distances?" "Something like that," Daiki shrugged, and Shikamaru bit his tongue. Wasn't he supposed to be an orphan? Was he really from some clan in the end? Anyway, 3 on 1, you guys wanna try your luck? He spun the scroll atop his finger and invited them to attack. No, we're good." Choji quickly waved his hands. "We can't steal a scroll from another Konoha team. That wouldn't be cool." Yeah, that wouldn't be cool at all," Shikamaru agreed, praising Choji mentally. "You need that to pass and all, right? Unless you started with an earth scroll as well?" "Nope, I started with a heaven scroll as well," Daiki shrugged, "though not that I need this at all. I've already long since finished this test, finished it within 40 minutes. I'm just shooting the breeze out here and seeing if I can find anyone interesting to fight." You what?" Shikamaru just stared at the muscular boy, while his teammates gaped. He'd already passed, and so quickly? Going by that time, he was probably the first to pass it all. Yet he was still out here? Was that even allowed? Well, considering he was here, it must have been. They wouldn't have let him back out otherwise. This was way outside his calculations. And he basically just invited them to attack him a moment ago. He needed to de-escalate. And quick. "Well, we wouldn't exactly be a challenge to you," Shikamaru gave a forced laugh. "Not with what we just saw you do. You totally destroyed that Rain team. And that Amaya guy is the student of some big shot of Rain, second only to their Kage, not the kind of person we could tango with unlike you." Daiki snorted. "That's not as impressive as you think. That guy was trash, as is his sensei," he retorted. "Hell, one of their strongest jonin is a traitor from our village called Aoi, yet he's barely even qualified to be called a jonin. The only strong guy the Hidden Rain have at all is Hanzo the Salamander. None of the rest are worth talking about." No, the fact he considered someone at the level of a jonin, even if barely by his words, as trash, was enough for them. They'd get destroyed by a seasoned shunin, never mind a jonin. He sure did know quite a bit about the Rain Village though. What did he do to that guy Amaya before killing him? Shikamaru wondered briefly. He'd just looked him in the eye before the guy started screaming. A genjutsu perhaps? But no, Daiki had wanted information and was fine with him not telling, not even fussed in the end. Do those eyes let him read people's minds? Like the Yamanaka clan techniques? Either way, whatever it did, wasn't pleasant. He didn't want to end up in that guy's place. He never got the chance to respond. Because. So you don't need it then? Ino perked up and smiled widely at Daiki, hopping over the bushes and stopping in front of him. That's really cool. You're really as strong as Kabuto claimed you were, stronger even, maybe even as strong as Sasuke-kun. What was that idiot blonde doing? Daiki snorted, almost as strong as Sasuke? Sorry to burst your bubble, Blondie, but Sasuke isn't even close to as strong as me. He crossed his arms. Ino's mouth dropped open, before pulling up into a scowl, but Daiki cut her off before she could reply. There's no boasting about that fact, it's just cold hard logic and results. I spar with Sasuke all the damn time, have been doing so for 4 months now, twice a week at least. He's not beaten me once since we graduated. No way. Ino gaped at the boy. Then Sasuke's only the second best genin in the village now? Again, Daiki snorted, not even close. He laughed. One of the Nidaime Hokage students has refused being promoted for decades. He's easily as powerful as a top-tier jonin. He's the second strongest genin in this village behind me. Then third is either Niji Hyuga or Rock Lee. Could go either way. Sasuke is around 5th best, maybe 6th. I give quite good odds on 10-10, the teammate of Niji and Lee beating him. S6th? Ino staggered back, looking like her entire world had been shattered around her. How annoyingly dramatic and troublesome of her. Females were such a pain. But Daiki revealed something there. A top-tier jonin-level combatant and former student of the Nidaime Hokage. That guy had to be in his 50s at least, with decades of experience, yet Daiki so casually claimed he was stronger than him. And just the casual way he said it, no bragging or boasting in it, as if it were just mere fact, told Shikamaru it was the truth. For reference, Naruto was about the 7th strongest genin. Daiki helpfully added, he's not that far off of being as strong as Sasuke now. Seriously? Shikamaru gaped. Really? Choji blinked and asked, surprised as the Nara was. That statement allowed Ino to recover from her shock. Okay, now I know you're talking bullshit. The Yamanaka glared at Daiki. There's no way the Deadlast is stronger than us, and definitely not nearly as strong as Sasuke. Naruto's always been stronger than you three, Daiki replied with an uncaring shrug. He's just way stronger now. Have you forgotten whose team he's on? He's Sasuke's main sparring partner. They train together every day. An idiot he may be, but unlike you guys, he trains himself into the dirt every damn day. But. No, he doesn't. That idiot always skipped class and never trained. Ino refused to believe Daiki's words. Shikamaru wasn't so sure though. Naruto was an idiot for sure, but there was something about the guy. He skipped because nobody taught him right until Iruka-sensei. He didn't just run around doing pranks when he wasn't there, Daiki pointed out. He did that a lot, sure, but he was training himself every damn day outside of the academy as well. Hell, the only reason he wasn't a genin a year and a half ago when he tried to test out the first time is because he failed the clone jutsu. He passed everything else. When he said it like that, it made a lot of sense. The thing about Naruto though, was that, in the academy, when it came to sparring, 90% of the time, he was always paired with Sasuke and got his butt kicked. That was the best they knew of his live combat abilities. And not something really to base his fighting ability on, really, considering Sasuke was heads and shoulders above everyone in class barring Daiki apparently. Not to mention, that one line there. Nobody taught him right until Iruka-sensei. Shikamaru's suspicions rose. The hate Naruto got around the village was so weird. He was an idiot and annoying at times, but nothing that should have deserved hate like that. And the way Daiki said it, it implied sabotage. And Mizuki-sensei handled a lot of Naruto's teaching as well. He joined the academy as their teacher only a couple months after Iruka-sensei. Mizuki-sensei, who had mysteriously disappeared after graduation. Something was seriously off here about Naruto. But nothing he could do about right now, he'd just need to think on it later. I don't think I've ever been so insulted, Ino muttered, a haunted look on her face. A mere 5 out of 10, and now even the dead last is apparently way more stronger and useful than me? Am I in a crazy genjutsu? Really, she was still focused on that? No, this is reality, Daiki refuted, and 5 out of 10 is a good thing, you should be proud. It's a score on my personal hot meter, everyone on it is already beyond the normal, so in reality you're 5 above a standard 10 out of 10. Really? Ino perked up almost instantly, before pumping her fist into the air. Hell yeah. I knew I was a super hottie. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. What an idiot. Wait, the blonde paused, what about Sakura? 3 out of 10. Daiki shrugged. And he seriously answered? What was his life, man? What a drag. Ha! Suck it, Sakura. Ino pumped both fists into the air this time, shouting victoriously, so you do think I'm hot then? She grinned at Daiki. And water is wet and the floor is made of floor. He rolled his eyes at her. Yes, you're gorgeous, what about it? Ino was caught entirely flat-footed, cheeks tinting red and the girl utterly avoiding Daiki's gaze. Seriously? That was all it took to shut her up? It was that easy? No, it's probably 'cause Daiki's all muscled up and hot to her now. What did she call him, a beefcake? Shikamaru cringed just thinking of that description. Not that he'd ever bother calling a troublesome blonde like Ino gorgeous. Amusing though, first he'd seen her like this. She sure could talk the talk, but when it came to walking the walk, looked like Ino couldn't make the cut. When she said nothing to Daiki's compliment, the boy just shrugged. Well, whatever, he spoke and flicked his finger, the scroll on top of it shooting through the air towards Ino. I think I'll call it quits here. Ino hurriedly caught the scroll and there was a shimmer of wind and leaves around him, the muscular genin disappearing from view with what looked like a shunshin. Then Ino gave an eep and jumped, her face turning crimson and steaming with heat. Ino? Choji asked, confused at her reaction, and Shikamaru was right there with him. They should be celebrating, they got out of this crazy situation without fighting Daiki and he just gave them the scroll. It was a win-win. A win-win-win really, since they didn't need to put in any effort to getting the scroll. He pinched my butt. Shikamaru's eyebrows rose at Ino's muttered response. Oh, so he was a perv then, okay, whatever. Also, weird, I recovered a ton of chakra when he did it as well. Ino looked up to look Shikamaru in the face. I think he transferred me some chakra when he felt me up. That opened up so many more questions. So Daiki could transfer chakra somehow. On top of that, he either had some crazy-ass hearing and heard them when Ino was saying how low on chakra she was earlier, or he was a sensor that could sense chakra like Ino, or that new jujitsu of his let him see chakra. That dude was one big question mark now. How annoyingly troublesome. After leaving Team 10 behind, Daiki made a beeline for the tower in the middle of the forest. There really wasn't anything left for him here. Anko had already cornered Orochimaru hours ago, and it went exactly as he remembered it for the most part. The only hiccup being, he had mentioned though another stole my gift for himself while trying to save them. Quite the interesting one, that boy. I'll be keeping an eye on him. Perhaps he'll search me out for power with Sasuke-kun. It was the exact reason why he hadn't mentioned Orochimaru to the Sandaime. Anko would do it for him, and the Sannin basically backed him up with his admittance and further enforced his loyalty to the village. Now, he not only had proof of being willing to give his life for the village to protect it from a bijou plot, but also would have it on the record he faced off against one of the 3 legendary Sannin to protect his comrades. Basically, it was good PR and all that. Especially since Orochimaru full-on praised his jutsu to Anko, who would report it as well. Unlike the situation with Isabu that the Sandaime seemed to be keeping under wraps, this would be one that probably spread thanks to all the people that saw the jutsu and would enhance his reputation with everyone else. Really, his genius just could not be underestimated. No, genius wasn't enough to describe his plan here. He was more like a super elite genius. Aizen should take notes from him. You really do love to toot your own horn, don't you? You realize it was a pretty basic plan, right? Isabu deadpanned. Also, why did you lie to that shinobi from Rain? I know you know whom his sensei is. I was just messing with him, Daiki ignored the slander against his clear genius and shrugged as he hopped through the trees. Also, I wanted to put him down a bit, he was arrogant as all hell. Of course he remembered who his sensei was, especially when he saw the Conch King summon. Naruto and Jiraiya fought it during the time skip alongside the sensei of that Amaya guy who apparently abandoned Rain once Pain or rather Nagato killed Hanzo and took over. A bit hypocritical of you, considering how arrogant you are. Aisabu snorted. I mean, at least I'm a lovable arrogant asshole. Daiki replied, unlike Amaya, the way he talked, you'd think he was a young master from some Chinese cultivation series. He was half expecting the guy to talk about giving him a green hat or something. It was seriously cringe to see that kind of thing play out in front of him. So he had some fun tearing him down. Lovable. I have a feeling you live in your own little world sometimes. He could practically see Aisabu rolling his eyes. I do, unfortunately I have to share it with everyone else. Daiki retorted. Aisabu sighed. Daiki grinned. Well, either way, it was lucky I came across Amaya, I'll admit that much, he admitted. For one thing, through tearing apart his mind, he learned how to train a few water jutsu he hadn't known before, and one specifically only promising rain ninja learned apparently. The water style, Black Rain Jutsu. It was a black-type elemental technique, like the Black Lightning of Kumo. Black-style elemental jutsu were much stronger than average. The jutsu itself created a rain cloud that let loose a downpour of black rain. The size and range of it could be very massive in size depending on how much chakra was put into it, and on top of that, the black rain even had properties of oil and could be set alight with a fire jutsu. With it, Daiki was sure that he could maybe use it to reverse engineer the process behind turning other elemental jutsu into black versions. And on top of that, he even got some information on Aorokusho, who had stolen the Night Aim's legendary Raijin no Ken, the Thunder God Blade. He'd love to get his hands on that and use it to possibly augment his Kiba blades, or maybe even turn it into a third Kiba blade. 3 was the best number. Have you changed your name to Zoro without me knowing somehow? Aisabu asked in amusement, though I do agree, 3 is the best. Daiki Rora Noa Uriai. That didn't sound too bad actually. No, Aisabu shut him down instantly. Fair enough. His name was already badass enough already. Though you're not far off, Daiki admitted, the Kiba blades are amazing already, but there's a limit to the force they have when I control them. I'm thinking I'll manifest your tails and wield the blades with them, so making a third version would be a good idea. Plus, also, it would leave his hands open for jutsu. Good luck with that. Those blades were created in Yuzu to my knowledge. They are, to my knowledge, chakra blades like the ones you gain from the village of artisans, but of much greater power and quality, yet at the same time, filled with seals, Uzumaki seals. Aisabu informed. Daiki grimaced. That would indeed be a problem. As good as he was with seals now, he still didn't come close to the Uzumaki bullshit. On top of that, he'd thoroughly inspected the blades and found no trace of seals on them. Which meant they were on the inside of the blade. Almost impossible for most to get a look at without taking them apart. Thankfully, he had a bit of silver lining there. With the Shinkigen he could peer inside them. Thank fuck for that. Now he just needed to reach the level of someone who could enslave the death god through a mask. Easy, not. It will take time, but I'm sure you can do it. You have quite the talent for the sealing arts, that I admit, Aisabu reassured him. Beyond that, who do you plan to make the summoner of the Conch King? Daiki smiled as he replied, I'm not sure, he admitted aloud. The Conch King wasn't like the newbie summon clans he made from the beasts in this forest. It was an actual powerful summon beast well beyond them. He already knew its weakness, which was why he won so easily. But originally, in the other timeline, it would cause trouble for not only Naruto, but Jiraiya as well, and almost kill Jiraiya thanks to its powerful Genjutsu mist, not unlike Aisabu's own. On top of that, it had those tentacles that normal kunai weapons would have real trouble cutting through. He only had it so easy thanks to the Kiba blades, and then there was that huge water cannon jutsu it fired off against him. That was a powerful jutsu for sure. And even with its awkward shape and huge size, the Conch King was surprisingly fast and able. And that wasn't even getting into how durable its shell was. It was scalable to a mountain itself, he was sure. It had taken Naruto using a big ball Rasengan almost as large as he was tall and wider than he was to defeat it while it was pinned by Jiraiya. A technique that had not even a fifth of that size when used against Itachi's doppelganger, had created a crater hundreds of feet in diameter. And even then he was sure it only worked because the Rasengan itself not only ground into a target, but exploded into a massive shockwave after that fact when fired off fully. If it wasn't an attack that could pass through its shell and hit it right within, there was few attacks that came to mind that could bring it down. All in all, the Conch King was a beastly summon boss, possibly right up there with Shiromari, and most likely had a clan alongside it. One thing Amaya wasn't wrong in, was his confidence in the Conch King, that Daiki would admit. He arrived at the tower not long later, 20 minutes or so, pausing in front of it before entering and peering inside. There was a variety of leaf chunin present within the building, and he could see Anko as well, at the top of the tower, resting in a backroom, laying along a couch. On top of that, in the middle floor, within a large mess hall, he noted there were 2 teams of genin present. It was Gaara and his siblings, and Team 8 comprising of Hinata, Kiba, and Shino. So those 2 were the only other teams that made it so far, huh? Well, there's still 4 days. Daiki mused, making his way inside, not bothering with the entrance room and just jumping straight up onto the pathways above leading into the middle flooring. The middle floor, from what he could see, didn't just have the mess hall, but a bunch of dorm-like rooms with 3 single beds in them. I guess I'll go pick out a room, he mused. There seemed to be some kind of chunin behind a desk at the area where the rooms were, so he headed there first. That guy probably handled the room keys and shit. He'd head to the mess hall first, mostly to see Hinata and maybe have a look-see at Gaara. But, his eyes flickered up, peering through the ceiling up into the top floor, where he saw someone rushing out of the control room towards Anko. He'd most likely be getting company soon. So that was what he did. He headed over to the chunin at the dorm rooms, acquired a key from the man while he was gaping at the fact he was a single genin allowed to compete and that he had completed the exam already. Then he headed into his room and closed the door beside him. Right, first things first. Daiki hummed, sitting on the bed. He brought his hands together in a cross seal, a shadow clone popping into existence beside the bed. You know what to do, he told his identical copy. Back to the grind, his clone grinned, Suunpa, he said simply, and in a flash of black and green, disappeared, heading to Isabu's dimension. He'd created that clone with half the total amount of chakra he had, who would then use the jutsu against himself to create a mass amount of clones, who would then all work on his newest jutsu, since they were water affinity and would be quicker to learn over Yagura's wind jutsu. He definitely wasn't going to let his grind fall to the wayside just because he was stuck here for 4 days. Right, now let's get a good look at my stats. Daiki grinned and clapped his hands. He was eager to see just how much his chakra capacity had grown due to the new seal on his neck. Status, he thought. Name, Daiki Uriai. Age, 13. Chakra capacity, 81, 300/162, 600, low tier Kage. Strength, 172/. Endurance, 246/. Durability, 172/. Agility, 172/. Taijutsu, 203/500. Ninjutsu, 262/500. Genjutsu, 45/500. Bokijutsu, 116/500. Chakra control, 225/500. Chakra affinities. Lightning, advanced roar with the power of thunder. Water, advanced the sea parts before you. Fuinjutsu, advanced. The breath hitches. Daiki's eyes flew wide open at what he saw. 162,600. And low tier Kage? Holy shit, he'd breached into the Kage realm and chakra. Yes, he pumped his fist into the air, hopping off the bed. Sure may have only been low tier as far as Kage went, but that didn't fucking matter. That was the motherfucking Kage tier. Really, that's all it takes to reach Kage status? I can only half submerge my body in here, Isabu uttered, surprised. How sad. Daiki froze. You picking a fight, buddy? No, just a factual statement. I don't bully the weak. Isabu fired back. Daiki would have loved to give him a zinger of a burning comeback and totally destroy the Bija's self-esteem, but, luckily for the big giant turtle, there was a knock at his door that saved him from such a fate. You keep telling yourself that, Daiki, it's as true as the sky being purple, but whatever helps you sleep at night. Isabu snorted. Daiki vowed revenge. But not now, he already knew who was at his door. He made his way over and pulled it open, and surprise, surprise, a familiar attractive and voluptuous purple-haired hottie dressed in a short tiny orange skirt, long open tan trench coat and skimpy mesh armor that showed off those tig old biddies of hers deliciously was standing on the other side of the doorway. Daiki leaned against the doorframe and gave her a smoldering stare and ever so debonair smile. "Sup good lookin'," he greeted her. Anko didn't even twitch. "We need to talk, horny brat." Chapter 27. Daiki was already well aware of why Anko came searching him out for a little talk. That didn't mean he couldn't be a little shit about it for a laugh though. "Talking is pretty low on the list of what I want to get up to with you," he grinned at the purple-haired woman. Anko rolled her eyes and bodily pushed past him into the room. Daiki shrugged, pushing off the doorframe and closing the door behind him. She looked around the room almost suspiciously, as if searching for something out of place. Daiki had to resist the urge to snort. What, did she think he had her old teacher stuffed beneath one of the beds or in one of the tiny closets? Maybe Orochimaru was in the bathroom soaping up and having a rub-a-dub-dub in the tub with a nice warm and relaxing bubble bath? "So, you wanted to talk?" Daiki prompted, crossing his arms, "Or we could skip it and get right to the naked part, I'm good with that." Hilarious, Anko scoffed and turned back around to look at him. "You should be dead," she dropped on him, right to the point and ever so bluntly. "Pretty sure I shouldn't be," he shrugged back. There was no need to be so dramatic about it. While it was true the cursed seal had a massive fatality rate, with only a 10% survival chance, that didn't just come down to the body. A lot of it came down to willpower and toughing out the pain of the seal itself. Like Sasuke dude, the guy went through a bunch of hallucinations and crap in the original timeline and was probably going through them right this very moment actually. It was excruciatingly painful for sure, Daiki could attest to that, but not exactly something Daiki would roll over, give up, and die from. That was quitter talk. A complete antithesis to the mentality needed for throwing oneself into the great grind. Pain was just weakness leaving the body. "Stop being contrary, brat," Anko rolled her eyes. "I know you have the curse seal, my old teacher was happy to brag about it. That Uchiha kid is probably writhing in agony right about now and a step from croaking, but what I don't understand is why you're not. It's mighty suspicious." He could see where she was coming from. After all, him gaining the curse seal, yet not going through the same agonizing hours on end of hanging to life by a thread, fighting and clawing tooth and nail mentally for survival, would imply that he was given something different, or maybe even had it all along and Orochimaru bringing it up was all just a ruse to allow him to use it freely. Too bad for her, he was above little things like that. "Orochimaru did give me his little hickey seal," Daiki shrugged, coming right out with it. "It's just too bad for him, he's a complete hack with seals and I'm utterly immune to his little body jacking stunt." Tough talk for an itty-bitty genin, Anko raised an eyebrow at him, but he noticed she stilled a bit at the mention of the body jacking. "You have to admit though, kid, you're suspicious as hell right now. You finished the exam with a clone of all things, while your real self was still out in the forest, and not long later, less than half an hour even by our estimates, you faced off against Orochimaru? What's your point?" Daiki crossed his arms. "In case you haven't realized yet, I literally put my life on the line and fought one of the 3 legendary Sannin to protect my comrades. You see that big fuck-off black tornado? Me, I took his little seal, amped myself with it and blew him the fuck away. And if it was just that, it would have been fine, except for that one little bit at the end." Anko narrowed her eyes at him. "It's the fact you're completely fine right now when anyone else recorded that has been given the curse seal, writhed in agony for at least 10 hours, few ever have survived it." He wondered idly how she would react to the fact that Orochimaru actually had bases full of kidnapped people that had survived it? And had literal hundreds of people that could access the curse seal level 2. "Have you taken into account the fact I'm not a little bitch like everyone else?" Daiki retorted, raising an eyebrow challengingly at her. "Maybe everyone else was just too mentally weak to control it like me." One of the woman's hands curled into a fist so tight he heard her knuckles pop. "You've got too big of a mouth on you, kid," she growled. "Good shinobi and kunoichi alike from this village have died in agony from that seal. I barely survived a weaker version of it myself and it's been a curse to me for a decade." That doesn't change my point. Sucks for them and you, I guess, and I sympathize, but when it comes to me, you're not dealing with the average ninja warrior anymore, Daiki retorted. I told you already, he's a complete hack when it comes to seals and I'm completely immune to the real purpose of the curse seal. And am I supposed to just take your word for it? Anko bared her teeth. You've done a whole lot of boasting, but, like it or not, my teacher is one of the greatest geniuses to ever come from this village, an S-class legend that only the Hokage could defeat in a fight now, and you, some random genin, if a talented one, claim you're completely immune to the curse seal that is felt even experienced and powerful jonin? Where's the proof? You know, I get this is kind of an important topic for you and has been like a curse for you, no pun intended, but you're not as hot when you're this pushy. Daiki rolled his eyes. You've already told the old man about this, right? What did he say? He changed the subject lightly. Nothing, he was tight-lipped and told me not to worry about it, just got this thoughtful look on his face, said something about is that how it is, and dismissed me, Anko replied, eyes narrowing even thinner at the mention of the Hokage, told me to speak with you about it, said I'd get my answers. Did that mean that old man Third had caught on to exactly how he was able to make the curse seal his own? Thanks to Isabu? It's really not that big of a logic jump if one understands your status as a Jinchuriki, Isabu chimed in fact, I do believe in the other timeline, this Orochimaru fellow used that Yukimura boy whose chakra could suppress mine, in the hopes of making him my Jinchuriki and then taking over his body with me unable to do anything due to being suppressed. That made sense. He'd always wondered what Orochimaru's whole deal was during that point, and why he bothered with it. But then, one of his biggest problems later revealed was having too weak of a body to use senjutsu. As a perfect Jinchuriki, that would more or less be a non-issue for him. Still, he had to wonder where the ever-loving fuck that Yukimura kid came from and how his chakra had an effect on Isabu. He's the son of Yagura, it is a mutation derived from being exposed to my own chakra upon being conceived, Isabu explained. Odd though, the Yukimura of your memories was clearly a teenager of around your current age, the one I know of should barely be over his toddler years right now. That was indeed weird. And it explained a lot actually. Neat. Well, not that it mattered anymore, since he was Isabu's Jinchuriki now and he didn't plan on ever stopping being so. He was the great Lord Sanbai Jinchurik-sama. Anyway, it seemed that the Sandaime was leaving the big reveal up to him here. He could tell Anko about his status as a Jinchuriki and reveal how he bodied the curse seal and made it his own and put an end to this nonsense here and now. It would be a slight problem of someone else knowing of his status as a Jinchuriki, but then, Anko wasn't exactly the type to give that information out freely, and would even most likely take it to her grave even under torture. And no doubt the old man had at least told his advisors, since he trusted them. And those two old clowns probably told Danzo. Annoying, and they'd have their eyes on him, but easy to deal with, and he already planned on dealing with Danzo at some point. Fuck it. It's pretty simple honestly, no real big grand mystery behind it. Daiki decided to just bite the bullet and shrugged. I'm a Jinchuriki, those curse seals all have a shard of your teacher's soul in them so he can control the people with them and eventually take over their bodies if he wants, and as long as one of them remains, he can't actually die. When he put his Hiki seal on me, my bijou destroyed the part of Orochimaru in it and made it pretty much benign, as in, I can use the benefits of the seal without any of the drawbacks. Silence. Anko's eyes slowly widened at his words. His soul? Anko's mouth floundered a bit and her expression screwed up in disgust. You mean I have a piece of Orochimaru inside me right now? She focused more on that than the Jinchuriki thing. Yup, lucky bastard, Daiki nodded and gave a huff. Basically, the way the seal works is it naturally draws in something called nature energy. The shard of Orochimaru would then convert that energy into nature chakra and something called senjutsu and pass it through into you, giving you a boost in power, but at the same time, enriching your own chakra and making the user feel dependent on him, so he can eventually basically take over other people's bodies. Anko sat that fine booty of hers down on one of the 3 beds within the room, the one he'd chosen to sleep in tonight at that, senjutsu? That's crazy high-tier stuff, only Lord Jiraiya is said to be able to use it, not even the Hokage can. She placed her hands on her knees, and hunched over in thought. It was a very unladylike seating position and if he was in front of her, he could see up her skirt for sure, so he did just that, stepping over to stand in front of her, just for a peek. Purple thong, nice, but wait, how do you know all this? She looked up, then realized where he was looking and gave him a dry look. Daiki shrugged unrepentantly, meeting her eyes, his memories. Daiki shrugged, pulling on his cover story for some of his knowledge. I didn't get much of them left behind by the soul fragment when it was destroyed, but I did basically get a front row seat to how he made the seal and know why it's such a pain in the ass to do anything about. It was honestly more like the surface thoughts of a shadow clone that I picked up, mind you. Anko's eyes widened at his words. You know how it's made? She jumped to her feet and grabbed him by the shoulders. Does that mean you can remove it? Daiki smirked. I can do one better. He grasped her hands and pulled them off. I can't remove it. That's actually impossible without killing you, but I know how to make it better, safe to use and more. He touched his hand to his chest plate and sealed it away, leaving him bare-chested in front of the voluptuous purple-haired special Jonin. That's one fly storage seal. She shook her head, not even reacting to the half-nudity. If you know how it was made and can make it even better and safe, why can't you remove it? She pressed. She seemed more interested in getting it removed than a safe power boost. He was actually a bit impressed at her not even blinking at the offer of a free power-up. The seal is connected to your chakra network itself, originally more like a parasite than anything else, and ripping it away would destroy parts of your coils and kill you, he responded bluntly. Granted, it was Isabu that had deduced that part. Like it or not, it's a part of you, but I've got the ability to turn it from a parasite into more of a symbiotic existence. Better even, since it would be more like a natural part of your body and not in any way a living creature. Damn it, Anko grimaced, something akin almost to despair flashing in her eyes for just a moment before she grit her teeth. Fine, alright. Can you do it for me then? And why did you take your top off, kid? Daiki rolled his eyes. To show you how I've changed up my seal. He turned around and showed his back to her, angling his head to the side to bare his neck to give her a better look. Have a look, I modified my own already. This isn't the cursed seal of heaven anymore. It's my heavenly star seal. To punctuate his words, he drew on the seal itself and felt as the tattoo-like markings spread out over his body and strength suffused his body. A light touch pressed against his shoulder and he felt Anko's finger trace the seal. It looks completely different, she noted. And you can do this for me? She asked again. Daiki grimaced himself this time, releasing the seal and allowing the marks and powers to fade away. He turned around and looked the woman in the eye. Yes, and no, he answered. The big problem is, you don't exactly have a bijou living inside you to kill off the Orochimaru's soul shard like I do. I'd have to project myself into your seal, find it, then kill it while it's already formed before I can do that. Anko's face fell. So it's impossible then, she sighed, slumping in defeat and planking that fine badonkadonk of hers back on the bed. It was kind of odd having such a spunky confident woman sitting in front of him with such a sad defeated look on her face. I didn't say that, so turn that frown upside down, hot stuff. Daiki put out. Like you said, I don't exactly have a bijou inside my head, kid, like you. No idea how you hid that, by the way, Anko shrugged. So how would you do it then? Projecting my consciousness into the seal itself isn't impossible. It's based on a seal for sealing a bijou and making a jinchuriki at the base, if a crappy one, Daiki replied, grinning at her. All I'd need to do is get in there, kill the shard of your old teacher and presto, you're good to go. Somehow I'm betting the way you said that is way simpler than it actually is. Anko pointed out dryly, though her eyes lit up at his words a bit. Right on the money, Daiki nodded. It sounds simple when I say it like that, but I'll still need to go in there and kill what amounts to Orochimaru. Sure, he'll have way less chakra to use than the real one, but this is still Orochimaru we're talking about here, and not just a shard that hadn't finished forming that got crushed the second it appeared in my body. Anko snorted. Yeah, if killing him was that simple, he wouldn't be alive and kicking right now. I can do it, I just need time, and it would help to know how he fights as well, Daiki shrugged. Besides, I'll vent a little jealousy out on him at getting inside you before me, he winked at her. And there may be a little side benefit to things as well. After all, he was sure he could still draw on Isabu's power even with his consciousness in there, and he'd have his own seal too. And when he killed it, he could snap up the chakra of it and add it to his own for a decent boost in chakra capacity, just like the one Isabu crushed out of existence. Beyond that, Anko was a prodigy student of Orochimaru's back in the day as a teen. She was held back by the seal itself to his knowledge. Removing that hamstring and actively making it better for her, may make it so she could catch up to the likes of Kakashi and Guy, more or less becoming an S-class kunoichi, possibly. And another strong and useful ally against the Akatsuki. Are you sure you ain't some kid of Lord Jiraiya? You're one horny little pervert, Anko barked out a laugh in pure amusement, the mood lightening almost immediately. Can't say I don't like the confidence in you though. Jiraiya wishes he had a kid as awesome as me, Daiki snorted. Also, I'm a teenager, and you're literally as hot can be and wearing practically nothing. You make it hard to think straight, he admitted truthfully. Seriously, he had an unbelievably hard time keeping his eyes off those tits of hers. Case in point, his eyes drifted to the large bodacious melons stretching out her mesh shirt underneath the trench coat she was wearing. Anko followed his gaze and smirked, crossing her arms under her breasts and making them swell up even larger into a mountainous cleavage. Like my tits do ya, she teased. Damn straight. Daiki nodded. Fair enough then, Anko snorted and then stood up, before boldly reaching forward with one hand and cupping his crotch. She opened her mouth to say something before pausing and her eyes widened. Damn kid, you're packing quite the weapon down here. There's a reason I call it Manda 2.0. Daiki smirked at her, baring his teeth. She erupted in a hail of hilarity. Oh hell, that old snake would rage so hard if he heard you say that. Good on you, Anko praised, and grasping his half-hard dick through his pants, stroking it with her palm. I'll be real here kid, if you manage what you said, I'm fine with letting you have your fun with me and riding me like a pony. His cock throbbed at the mental image and a shit-eating grin appeared on her face. Seems you like the sound of that, huh? Anko teased, and licked her lips at him, and before his eyes, her tongue stretched out to below her chin and she wiggled it at him before pulling it back between her plump lips. Damn tease. A bit like this you mean? Daiki lashed out with his hands, grabbing the woman by her hips and forcing her to spin around. Before reaching up with one hand while the other went to her back, he grasped her by her spiky pineapple-like ponytail and pushed her down with the other, bending her over and yanking her head back, exposing her neck to him, using her hair as a leash, and pressed himself against her backside, grinding his hardness into the soft, bouncy lusciousness of her full ass, stretching out that skirt of hers to the point where it looked like a second skin. Oh, you're a bit of a rough one, huh? Rawr, Anko laughed and looked back at him from the corner of her eye and then began wiggling her hips, grinding herself against his raging cock. A teasing bray vibrated out of her throat and lips. He had half a mind to just seal away both of their clothes and just take her right here for this teasing. He was harder than he could ever remember being, lust filling his veins. Even having his way with Kurenai hadn't made him this horny. But it was not to be. A second later, there was a puff of smoke and there was a pillow in Anko's place while she stood at the top of the bed and readjusted her clothing. That'll have to wait until later kid, Anko told him, walking past him and trailing a single finger over his bare shoulders as she did. I'll look you up during the month leading up to the final round of the exams and show you what I can of my old sensei's fighting style and jutsu. Daiki gave her a deadpan look. And what am I supposed to do with this? He pointed at the massive spear-like tent at his crotch. That is not my problem right now, she shrugged. You can always go find Kurenai, not that she comes close to how hot I am. But she's an easy lay as you know, and she might tide you by until you get your hands on this prize. She looked over her shoulder at him as she reached the door and then gave her ass a little spank over her skirt, letting him know exactly what the prize she was talking about was. And then she opened the door and left the room behind, leaving Daiki standing there with a massive boner and nobody to use it on. Maybe he could see about clubbing some seals with it, see if that euphemism actually held up? Why did you make it out as if you wouldn't be capable of defeating the shard of Orochimaru right now? Isabu struck up conversation as he worked and toiled away. And by that, he meant he sat absolutely still while a clone of his took a needle filled with sealing ink in his own blood. An hour had passed now since Anko left him with the most raging of all raging erections, horny for a piece of pie, and until he could calm himself down and shake off the blue balls that would no doubt come, he figured he'd get something productive done and dusted with. As such, he was finally getting around to enhancing the Dimension Force seal. And by that, he meant adding the Barrier seal, the Chakra Absorption seal and the Chakra Filter seal to the final product. You clearly wanted to bed the woman very much. The shard of Orochimaru will be nowhere near his full strength, not with the pitiful amount of chakra it will have available to it, less even than the amount you had when we first met, the three-tailed Bijou continued. He would be trapped in there, nowhere to run and forced to face you with full access to my power. Formidable the man may be, but there's only so much one can do with so little chakra. Daiki forced himself not to grimace at the thought. For sure, he could have done it. He could have killed that shard, taken its chakra for another boost in his capacity, fixed Anko's seal and railing her silly right here and right now. As much as he wanted to do that though, he wanted to focus on the bigger picture. That could come later, after he'd learned all he could of Orochimaru's jutsu and fighting style from Anko herself. she was bound to know a bunch of jutsu of his, like that hidden shadow snake hands jutsu. He'd always wondered before if that required a summoning contract with the snakes to use, and if so, he might be able to apply the usage of it to make jutsu with the chameleons, kind of like Jiraiya's toe jutsu and shit. Ah, how obvious, I should have realized, Isabu paused at Daiki's thoughts. The only thing that comes before rutting like a lust-filled wild beast with you, is your beloved grind and gaining even more power. Don't knock it till you try it. Daiki replied with a mental shrug. I don't need to, I can share your senses such as touch whenever I please due to there being no barriers between us. It is a pleasant feeling I suppose, but I do not harbor the attraction you do to human females, Isabu retorted, nor do I have a fascination with large bouncing mammaries or perky round buttocks. Sucks to suck. Daiki snorted. Say that when you can boast having even a 50th of the chakra I do. Isabu shot back. Fuck you. Daiki mentally gave him the finger. Sorry, I'm not a slovenly human woman, are those stolen eyes of yours going bad already? Isabu retorted. And from there they devolved into some squabbling and ribbing of each other while his shadow clone pierced his hands with a needle over and over. Despite what he claimed to his inner turtle power buddy, Serpent King Manda 2.0 Sage Mode thought otherwise. And by that, Daiki meant that his raging dick took absolutely ages to calm down. He wasn't anywhere near Snow Country and nor did he have a summoning contract for them, so it just wasn't possible to club some seals either. So he just had to tough it out and deal with the blue balls. Bickering with Isabu helped keep his mind off of it at least. Even if he still had to walk a little bit gingerly, when it should be Anko walking bow-legged in his place. But, such was life. The things I do for the grind. Daiki shook his head, idly examining his newly enhanced hand seals. He held one hand up and focused his chakra and thought into it and watched as a small spherical barrier shimmered into existence around his hand. He could make it way bigger, the size and sturdiness of it dependent on the amount of chakra he put into it, but he was just testing it out for now. With his other hand, he held out one finger, lightning sparking into existence and buzzing loudly around it, and he gave a single finger thrust. A loud tick noise echoed throughout the room, and his fingers was rebuffed, not bad. Daiki whistled, he could pierce through solid rock with a lightning-enhanced finger thrust nowadays, a far cry from in the beginning when he could barely crinkle a leaf. And that was with a pitifully small amount of chakra. At full capacity, this barrier seal of his could probably block A-rank jutsu and not fall. He withdrew his chakra from the seal and watched the shield flicker and disappear, before reaching up and stretching his arms over his shoulders. Guess I'll go take a look around here now, he mused. There really wasn't much for him to do right now. The only thing he had to do was physical training, but he could do that later, and his clones were already working on the jutsu that had been ever so generously donated to him in the forest. Daiki left his room for the next few days, locking the door behind him and went a little donner through the tower. A single glance with his eyes told him where the most interesting people to look up were. And by that, he meant the mess hall. Well, Anko was at the top of the tower, talking to some very interesting people, and a cripple. He wasn't expecting Danzo to be there. But, he wasn't important at all, not right now anyway. They're probably watching me right now. Daiki mused. There were cameras spread about all over the building, even one in his bedroom. It was a simple matter to notice them with his eyes, even hidden within the wall as they were. He'd already covered the lens. If it was just normal day, he wouldn't mind. In fact, he would have timed it just right for when a time only Anko was watching and then gave her a good show. But he was waiting on a delivery right now. Two actually. And he didn't know when his summons would pop up with them. So, they didn't get to spy on him like every other genin competitor in this tower. When he arrived in the mess hall, Daiki was quick to notice the occupants. As he confirmed more than an hour ago, Team 8 were present, as were Gaara and his siblings. Odd that they were still hanging around in here, but then, there really wasn't much to do in the tower. I totally should have stayed it out in the forest. Daiki groaned inwardly. He should have stuck around and kept an eye on Sakura to see how she did against the team from Sound. Maybe tease her a bit more about her ass. It was so funny when she tried to take a swing at him and moved in practically slow motion to his eyes. The way he left her in a tizzy brought a smirk to his face. He shook his head, putting that out of mind. It wasn't possible now after all. Who should I sit with, I wonder, he mused. There were 3 options. Hinata and her team near the front tables, Kankuro and Temari in the absolute middle as if they ruled the territory, or Gaara lounging at the very bottom corner out of sight keeping to himself. Hinata or Temari? A tough choice. Hinata was hot as shit, but she was into Naruto, so no progress could be made there. Temari was a hot older girl, but she was also here to destroy his village and kill everyone, and had a bit of a cruel condescending streak for Konoha Nin currently. It would usually just come down to those 2 choices. But, Gaara, it could be fun to mess with him. Decisions. Daiki smirked, casually making his way to the front of the room where a long selection of food was prepared and waiting to be picked from. All eyes of the occupants of the mess hall went to him as he casually made his way over to the selection of food. Not bad a selection either, Daiki noted. Yank. He grabbed up some chicken, some egg, some fish, and paused at the end where he found a selection of meat ranging from pork to lamb. Oh ho! Doner kebab. Yoinkity yunky yank. He'd gained quite the taste for it after he fused with his alternate self. Doner kebab had been his absolutely favorite food. Now I just need to find somewhere that does some nice chili sauce one of these days, he mused to himself. With a massive platter of meat to fill his belly and fuel his gains later, Daiki turned around and eyed the occupants again, idly glancing them over. Tempting, oh so tempting to go poke fun at Gaara, it really honestly was. But, sadly, it was probably best that he did not do that. Things were going to be a big pain in the ass as was soon days. Bullying Gaara would definitely throw a few things off course. If at all possible, he'd like to keep Gaara's path alone the same into the finals. There was no telling where he'd play into things if, say, Daiki was the one to fight him and beat him during the preliminaries. He'd have enough to deal with considering he wanted Old Man Third to survive and Orochimaru seemingly was thinking sending Kimimaro after his head. And Gaara would definitely not be in the finals if Daiki went and had some fun poking at him and giving him the good old runaround. The redhead would no doubt snap, try to murder him, and then Daiki would be forced to put the boot to his sand-covered head. Best to play it safe then, he mused and began making his way over to where Team 8 was situated. He could at least pass some time flirting with Hinata. As he made his way over, he passed by the 2 older Sand siblings and met Temari's eyes. He winked at her. Her eyebrows rose, but she smiled back at him. What's with Konoha? It's full of total hotties, he read her surface thoughts. Ha! Sup? Daiki greeted Hinata and her team a second later, sliding into the seat beside the Hyuga girl and putting his tray of food down. Hope you don't mind company. Hello Daiki-kun. Hinata gave him a warm smile in return. Feel free dude, Kiba snorted, good timing anyway, I've been wanting to ask you some shit. He said, while the bug-using Shino Aburame merely gave a slight incline of his head in Hinata's greeting. Daiki gave the Aburame a nod back, before turning his attention to Kiba, and that would be, he asked the K9 Shinobi, absently reaching down and grabbing up a big honking piece of chicken and taking a big bite out of it. For one, the hell happened to you? Kiba raised an eyebrow and leaned forward to look him in the eyes. It's only been 6 or so months since we all graduated and since then you've gone on to become some super ninja apparently? At least according to this Kabuto dude we talked. Special permission from the Hokage to do this exam solo and you even have freaking Sasuke looking for info on you. Hell, Hinata was even telling us we needed to avoid you in the exam if we didn't want taken out straight away. Nothing much, I just trained hard, ate my veggies and drank plenty of juice. Daiki shrugged, then looked to Hinata and grinned at her. You wanted to avoid me, huh? I'm hurt. His grin transitioned into a pout. Hinata's warm smile stretched a tad and she rose a hand to cover her mouth politely. Era? Did you want to find me in the forest? She asked in return and Daiki froze and then blinked, taken aback. If I knew you missed me so much, I would have waited for you. Her hand moved around to cup her pale cheek daintily. What just happened? Did she just flirt back with him? And with the way he'd offhandedly mentioned to try on her blonde crush? A glance at her teammates told him they were just as surprised as he. Kiba was gaping at her wide-eyed and Shino's eyebrows had risen up above his sunglasses rising into his hairline. Chapter 28. For a moment, Daiki just stared at the Hyuga heiress, completely taken aback by her confident, rather bold reply. And that era. It took his mighty strong willpower to stop himself from shivering. 10 out of 10, that was perfect. His stunned reaction to her reply was very obvious, and Hinata's smile grew a tiny bit wider. You totally should have. He forced his shock down and grinned at the older girl. There was a point there where I had to sit still for a good few hours. Looking at you would have made it much more bearable. Her cheeks tinted red, but before she could reply, her teammate jumped in. Sitting around for a few hours out there? Guess we're so good even a hotshot ringer like you're getting called would have trouble keeping up. Kiba grinned at him. We finished in just 4 hours, second team overall, and even broke a few records, the feral dog using Shinobi boasted proudly. I finished in less than 45 minutes and was the first to finish the exam actually. If you're going by the Suna team over there beating you for placements, then you guys are third actually. Daiki burst his bubble and smirked at him, idly picking up and chomping down on a piece of kebab meat. I just didn't feel like waiting around, so went to play some more in the forest and have some fun. What? Kiba blinked, the proud grin on his face disappearing, and he stared at Daiki blankly. No way, bullshit. He shot to his feet and slammed his hands on the table. His loud eruption drew 3 sets of eyes. 2 male and 1 belonging to a pretty sandy blonde. No, he is not lying, Shino commented, looking at Daiki in the eye through his sunglasses. Why? Because only a fool would lie about a thing so easy to confirm when any exam proctor could tell us what he said. Daiki's smirk grew to taunting proportions. Kiba clicked his tongue. Well, whatever, we still beat Sasuke and Naruto at least. He sat back down, arms crossed. Guess that ringer shit has some merit to it then, eh? Maybe, or maybe I'm just that good, Daiki shrugged. Don't put too much stock into the ringer thing. Most ringers aren't absolute badasses like me, but like Sasuke, hell, give it a year or so and Hinata could be one as well. You think so? Hinata hummed. I know so. He turned his ever so lovable smirk on her. Ah, thank you. She looked away, thanking him softly, but even then she couldn't hide how pleased her voice sounded. Ha! More confident in taking his advice or not, she still wasn't quite used to the honest praise yet. Alright, the heck is going on between you two? Kiba questioned, looking between the pair of them weirdly. Hinata's been acting weird lately, totally different, and you're totally flirting with her bro. Hinata turned back around to reply, but Daiki beat her to it. Nothing much, just been helping her train and change some things to get what she wants, he shrugged. Kiba's eyebrows rose. So you're the reason for the new look and how fast she's been improving, he asked, leaning back in surprise. Something like that, Daiki shrugged again. I just gave her some home truths. Ain't that right, good looking? He looked to Hinata, his smirk growing. Something like that. Hinata repeated his words, a light demure giggle escaping her lips. Kiba eyed them for a moment before rolling his eyes. Well, whatever, not really my business unless you're causing her trouble. He gave up, and leaned back over the table. Since you're here actually, and since you've helped Hinata so much, I'll give you a heads up about a guy even you should avoid. Oh? Daiki's interest was piqued. Though, he already had a good guess as to who Kiba was about to warn him about. Kiba leaned forward over the table a bit more, to the point where he was literally hanging over Daiki's food and met his eyes, before flickering them briefly to the corner of the mess hall, and Akamaru on his head under his hood was directly in front of his face. Directly where Gaara was sitting out of the way. As expected. Daiki supposed they saw him in action in the Forest of Death. Daiki nodded, signaling Kiba he knew who he was talking about. That guy's crazy. He got thousands of Senbon tossed his way and didn't even blink, just used some freaky sanjutsu to shield himself and it was so fast I could barely follow it, Kiba whispered lowly. He carries around his sand in that crazy gourd on his back and it stinks, man. It absolutely reeks of blood. Even right now I can smell it. We saw them kill a team of 3 older rain ninja that seemed really tough. He just crushed them to death with his sand. It was brutal. Dunno how strong you are now, dude, but I doubt even Sasuke could beat this guy. Information given. The dog ninja leaned back into his seat, and Daiki noted that Hinata and Shino were giving him their full attention as well as he digested Kiba's words. Hinata especially seemed to be waiting to see how he would reply to Kiba's words about the Jinchuriki of the one-tailed Shikaku. Oh, you mean Raccoon Boy? Daiki wasn't quiet at all as he replied, and his voice traveled over the mess hall easily. Yeah, you're right about him being tough, not someone any of you guys can take on. He's the youngest son of the Kazekage, and the hot blonde and guy with the painted face are his siblings. He noted in his peripheral vision, both Temari and Kankuro tensing up. especially at the raccoon boy part. The teal eyes of Temari met his own and were now wide with shock. Course, I'm different from you guys, he's not someone I can't kick around for fun, Daiki smirked boldly, and didn't break eye contact with Temari. If you go up against the other two though, the guy is a puppet user using chakra strings and probably poison, while the hot blonde is definitely a wind user, a bad matchup for any of you guys actually. He noticed Kankuro tense at his words, and Temari's wide-eyed gaze narrowed at him. He winked at her and turned away, looking at the three of Team 8, you seem to know a lot about them. Hinata pointed out, and he noticed there was now a small frown on her face. She must be really taking these guys seriously. I know a lot in general, he shrugged, but yeah, you guys should avoid taking them on. Well, beyond Puppet Boy, you and Shinobi are bad matchups for him after all as well, he added to the white-eyed girl. And he noticed then, he was done with his food. Daiki stood up, his tray in hand. Right, well, fun as this has been, I may go train and grind this meat into my meat, Daiki said. He paused only to smirk at Hinata. You're welcome to grind on my meat anytime you want, by the way. Shino's eyebrows rose up over his sunglasses in surprise. Kiba gaped gobsmacked. Hinata blinked and gave him a confused glance, before her eyes widened as she apparently realized what he said, and a crimson-red blush spread across her cheeks. She cupped her face once more though, surprising him. How forward, Daiki-kun. But if you need help with your meat, I may pop by your room later to help you with it. Daiki blinked. Stunned. Hinata? Kiba spluttered. Kiba's shock was enough to let him recover from his own, and Daiki recovered his smirk. I'll hold you to that, sweet number 9, he winked at her and left the table. Later, he bid them goodbye and went off to deposit his tray and leave the room. As he did, he noted once again all eyes were on him, and Gaara in particular was glaring bloody murder at him, leaking a heavy dose of killing intent. Scary. Not. He smirked at the redhead as he left. He had to at least get one taunt in on him, even if he was hoping to avoid putting the boot to his sand-rodent ass. So this is Daiki Uriim, the impassive voice of an elder woman mused aloud. There was no inclination as to what Koharu Udatane felt in her voice as a gathering of high-ranking shinobi and kunoichi alike observed the boy making his way back to his provided room for his stay in Tower of the Forest of Death. Beside her, a frown was on the face of her teammate Hamura Mitokado, but he said nothing himself. Each of them were sat on either side of the third Hokage, who had a small amused smile on his face as he witnessed what just happened in the mess hall of the tower. Throughout the room, the staff of shinobi and kunoichi that oversaw the Forest of Death itself and the second round of the Chunin exams kept quiet. Even Anko, standing beside the screen showing off the feed from the cameras throughout the tower. Kohora began. But she was cut off. The sound of what echoed through the room as a cane was thrust into the floor hard. He's a fool, Danzo Shimara spat, none too impressed. He just drew the eyes of the Kazekage's children, one of them an unstable Jinchuriki, knowingly at that, just so he could show off to a girl. His one unbandaged eye opened and he gave a disdainful glance at the Hokage. This is the one you have so much interest in. His disappointment could not be any more apparent. Hiruzen's smile grew. As always, you have such a narrow view on things, my old friend, he replied, voice casual and not at all bothered by his disdain. I assume you're annoyed at the fact he so easily revealed what he knew, in front of them at that? Of course, any advantage he could glean from that is now lost, Danzo scoffed. Talented he may be, but talent means nothing without the proper mindset to utilize it. You're looking at it all wrong, Hiruzen chuckled, shaking his head in amusement. That wasn't a mistake, Daiki knows exactly what he done. While he was indeed showing off to young Hinata, that was not all he was doing. He was getting in their heads, telling them he knows exactly what they can do and he is not impressed. They in turn know nothing of his abilities and will work themselves into quite the tizzy, no doubt, over trying to counter him. Pure arrogance, Danzo scoffed, unperturbed by the reply he got. That boy Gaara, he's as unstable as they come and his seal is pitifully weak. He can allow the Ichigo to run amok at a moment's notice, yet this boy sees no threat in him. Last I checked, 3 tails beats 1, Hiruzen smugly pointed out, and of course Daiki has full control over the Sanbai and works together with it. Young Gaara can only let the beast itself run rampant. The Shikaku is no match for Daiki and the Sanbai together. So you say, Danzo huffed, I have yet to see any proof of this wonder boy you have been telling tall tales of and giving such special treatment to having any control over the beast at all, and even if he did, defeating the Shikaku would be no simple matter. The damage it would cost when being brought down would be catastrophic if released within the village. "We're not in the village, old man," Daiki's voice echoed from the speakers connected to the camera feed, "so stop your whining." Everyone froze, Danzo included, at the sudden interruption. Everyone bar the Hokage himself, though, who merely chuckled even louder. For a moment nobody said a thing, such was the surprise at the sudden interruption. Danzo was the one who found his voice first. "Well, beyond the Hokage, that was, you can hear us?" he asked, surprise evident in his tone despite how he tried to hide it, his one singular eye open wide. "I can see the entirety of this forest, and whatever I can see, I can hear. That includes you guys sitting up top in the tower thinking you're all mysterious and shit and observing everyone," Daiki scoffed. "The Kazekage's children aren't a problem. I could beat all three of them, even Gaara. His ability to bring out the Ichibi isn't a problem. We're far enough away from the village that I'd have room to clown on it, and I wouldn't let it get that far anyway. I'd seal it off before he ever got the chance." "Yes, that, indeed," Hiruzen helpfully added, the amusement plain on his face at seeing his old rival be berated by a child. "I was unaware of such an ability. Dear Sarutobi apparently didn't see fit to inform me of such." Danzo quickly regained his calm and gazed dryly with his singular eye at the Hokage. Hiruzen just gave him a pleasant smile. "Well, I didn't think you needed to know. You are after all supposed to be on house arrest," he pointed out unrepentantly. "I only allowed you out to indulge Koharu and Hamura when they asked after I revealed we had a little chat and invited them here." "Humph," Danzo sniffed, looking away from the Hokage and looking to the screens and the boy taking central stage within them, who was now leaning against one of the walls of the hall he was in, arms crossed and casually looking up. "Be that as it may, it is still a risk you foolishly and arrogantly took without needing to." "Cool story, bro," Daiki scoffed, and many of the gathered shinobi outright goggled at his disrespect to one of the honored elders of Konoha. "Also, just for your knowledge, I wasn't just showing off for Hinata, I was showing off to Temari as well. She's pretty hot, isn't she? It'd be cool to bang a Kage's daughter, I'm thinking." "Bro!" Those gathered in the viewing room had the distinct and ever so rare opportunity to see Danzo Shimura completely lose his composure and sputter in shock, confusion, and a not so little helping of disbelief. In shock, confusion, and a not so little helping of disbelief. Anko snorted and the Hokage's chuckles turned into full-on laughter. Do you not understand the meaning of respect, boy?" Danzo couldn't help but ask, goggling at it as sheer arrogance to talk to a man of his stature like that. "Do you?" Daiki countered an instant later. "I mean, you were happily running your mouth about me right there without understanding or even knowing a fraction of what I can do. And for the record, yes, I can full-on use the Sanbai's chakra as I please, and I can enter Bijou mode at will. I just don't show that off because that would be fucking stupid to advertise, unless you think that's a good idea or something." Silence. Danzo had absolutely nothing to say in return. The old man's hand tightened over his cane and his lips trembled as he looked and tried to find words with which to reply. And failed utterly. "Try not to bully Danzo too much. He's a feeble old man these days, Daiki-kun," Hiruzen replied in his stead, smile still on his face. "Also, maybe try not to broadcast your multiple-tailed friend so openly, Those in here can be trusted not to let this information leak, and know as such, but not everyone has the training the ninja in this room have when it comes to guarding secrets." "Fair enough," Daiki shrugged. "I only brought it up because you guys were already talking about it and obviously already know. And Anko I told personally. Oh, by the way, hey pony girl," he waved at the camera. "You really need to work on that tact, brat." Anko shook her head. "Pony girl? You foo-foo, I sense an interesting story there." Hiruzen giggled in interest, without any shame at all despite those gathered in the room. Hamura sighed, and Koharu rolled her eyes, well aware of her teammate of multiple decades' perverted side. "Hiruzen, really, must you?" the old woman asked. The Hokage shrugged. "She offered to let me ride her like a pony if I fixed that hickey on her neck." Daiki shamelessly and proudly replied. Dozens of eyes swept over to Anko and gave her a series of stunned looks, the Hokage and Danzo included. In return she shrugged. "I'd do pretty much anything to loosen the hold Orochimaru has on me or get rid of it." "He's offering one better," Anko admitted aloud. "The horny little brat has been pretty upfront about wanting to bang me. If it motivates him and lets him accomplish what he promised, I'll happily do it." Interesting, tell me more." Hiruzen leaned forward in his seat, wiping his nose discreetly. "Yes, I quite agree, but on your ability to deal with the cursed seal, not your shameless lustful ways. Koharu was quick to jump in, and I do hope, young man, that you aren't so easily led astray by some female skin as you seem to be. Strong and talented you may be, an understatement, but even a Jinchuriki will have trouble surviving getting their throat slit after they are led astray by the first pair of large breasts or long legs that try to seduce them outside the village. That wouldn't kill me, Daiki shrugged, but fair enough. So Anko has filled you guys in on the situation with the cursed seal? She has. Hamura inclined his head simply, speaking for the first time. Right, well you probably already know the specifics of what I told her then, Daiki hummed. To get to the point, the real problem with the curse seals are the shards of Orochimaru's soul in them. I can project myself into the seals if it comes to that, but I'll have to fight that shard of Orochimaru and kill it. It won't be anywhere near as hard to kill as the real Orochimaru, because it only has a fraction of his chakra and as such won't be able to use his full power, and I'll be able to use my full power while I'm at it. I'm confident I can do so, but I'm covering my bases first, and learning how he fights in his jutsu from Anko just to make sure. At the mention of his traitorous student, Hiruzen sobered, a frown appearing on his face. How far that boy has fallen. He shook his head in dismay. Still, we may benefit from this. Anko was once one of our brightest and most talented, a rival of Kakashi in talent. If not for that seal, she may have become even stronger than him. There was a reason after all, why one such as Orochimaru had specifically sought her out to take as his own personal apprentice. That'd nice, but I'll take not being able to use my full strength and chakra over being brainwashed by this damn seal any day of the week. Anko shrugged. You won't be waiting much longer, Hiruzen promised. I'll be personally overseeing Daiki's training during the month leading up to the final rounds of the Chunin exams. It was a grand reveal, and it silenced the entire room once more. The fact that the Hokage and legendary professor was personally going to be training the boy. You can't be serious? Danzo hissed. I see you clocked on, old friend, still quick even in your old age, at least sometimes I suppose. Hiruzen chuckled. You want to make this brat Hokage? Danzo demanded. And shock filled the faces of all others within the room. I do. Hiruzen replied simple with a single nod in confirmation. Hiruzen, truly? Is that wise? Hamura asked, turning to look at his old friend, and Koharu nodded in agreement. Yes, for his age he is strong, and his potential is mind-boggling. His ability to reach the level of strength needed is not in question, I dare say, she brought up, but he is so very young still. He has yet to come close to his maturity and inexperience still. Things that he will gain in time, and I dare say myself that I am not in any danger of suddenly dying any time soon, Hiruzen pointed out. I will be training him myself personally, and will be promoting him straight to Jonin once these exams finish. Coming to the aid of Team 7 and driving off my former student is proof enough of his ability to hold the position. Daiki on the screen gave a bit of a start at the old man's words, but nobody noticed since everyone's attention was on the Hokage and the extremely shocking information he was revealing. After all, everyone within the room was there to hear the Sandaime Hokage's personal choice on who would become the Godaime Hokage, history in the making. Foolish, Danzo scoffed, strength and experience? Paltry, what we need is a leader that can make the hard choices. Should he become Hokage, it will be revealed that he is a Jinchuriki of a bijou belonging to another village. Mist will bark, though they are toothless now, so do not matter, but stone and cloud, they will threaten and encircle us, threatened by us possessing another bijou at our beck and call. What will he do then? Placate? A child that has not seen war has no right to be Hodash. I'll destroy their villages if they try it. Daiki cut him off. Thanks to my eyes, I can mask my chakra entirely. None can sense or see my chakra unless I allow it, even when using the Sanbai's chakra. I can get into any of their villages without them any the wiser and transform into the Sanbai itself and unleash a Bijudama right in the center of their villages. I'll wipe them out and then leave, and that's it. Now will you shut up? Old man Hokage's word is law, so stop your damn whining about it before I decapitate you. I'm sick of your voice already. Danzo was stunned into silence by the threat and proclamation of intent against their enemies. There was absolutely nothing he could say against that. Hiruzen, is he actually capable of such a thing? Koharu asked. Indeed, very much so, the Hokage nodded, though, that should be a very last option, Daiki-kun, I'd like to have you agree with. Wanton killing on that scale is not something one should so casually decide on. Once again, shock prevailed over all else for most of the room, wide-eyed stares turning to look at the boy on the screen at the Hokage's confirmation. Well, obviously, Daiki snorted, I've got no problem killing enemy shinobi or kunoichi, but killing civilians isn't pleasant at all, sickening really. That's just for if Stone or Cloud tried to push their nonsense like they have before, I'll let them see that I can push back harder. I rescind my previous statement, and apologize, Danzo added a moment later as the boy finished, I will not go back on my words that the boy is arrogant and his inexperience shines brightly, but if he has the will to back up those words, then he is a much better candidate than Jiraiya or Kakashi, they wouldn't have the stomach for such a thing, see that you don't soften that edge Hiruzen. I will try my best. Hiruzen replied, blatantly rolling his eyes. Because of course threatening genocide was what won the boy Danzo's favor. Lovely. Well, if even Danzo is agreeing with you now, then there is nothing much I can do to convince otherwise, Koharu sighed in defeat, we will have to make sure the boy matures though, that is for sure. I'm still here you know. Daiki pointed out at her words. However could I forget, the old woman responded dryly. Yeah, I like you lady, Daiki snorted, too bad you ain't young anymore, I've seen a picture of you in the records. You were pretty hot, I wouldn't have minded you in your younger years helping me mature if you'd know what I'm saying, but... Koharu palmed her face, you are a cretin rivaled only by Jiraiya. Thanks, Daiki shamelessly grinned, now, I've got training to get back to. Need to throw myself back into the grind so I can get even swoller and then I may go all Tobarama on these bitches in the exam and make Konoha great again. With that said, the boy on the screen pushed up off the wall, his head lowering and looking ahead of him and more or less letting them know he was done speaking. Grind? Swole? Koharu was utterly lost, I don't understand, what does that mean? And why is he bringing Sensei's name into this? A personal quirk of the boys, the grind is what he calls training, grinding at a whetstone I assume and swole, I'm not sure, but I believe it has something to with his muscles. Hiruzen stroked his chin and hummed, as for the mention of Tobarama Sensei, it is a joke I'm led to believe that he first started using with young Sasuke-kun because of Tobarama Sensei's wariness of the Uchiha. Hamura snorted, Tobarama Sensei would have been amused. That is not the point, Koharu shook her head, to use the honored Nidaime Hokage's name like that, how disrespectful can one boy be? You should look into giving the boy lessons in etiquette before he mouths off to someone and starts a war. The older generation fell into a discussion of the boy, and Anko watched on blankly, who knew the kid was actually such a big shot, she mused. Chapter 29. When he returned to his room, Daiki got straight back to the grind. There wasn't a lot of room, he so ended up sealing all the furniture of the bedroom inside his Dimension Force seal to free up some space. Even then it wasn't exactly much to work with, it was a small 13 feet by 13 feet space after all. He could jump to Isabu's dimension and leave a clone behind at any time, but he decided not to. He had the camera in his room covered so none could watch him, but he couldn't be sure of just when somebody would next seek him out, somebody that a simple shadow clone wouldn't fool easily, especially after his little mouthing off episode against Danzo. I should have, 6-967, just kept my mouth shut, 6-968, but the guy just pisses me off, 6-969, nice, he mused inwardly as he went through one-handed, handstand push-ups. If there was ever someone that should have retard branded across their forehead, it was Danzo fucking Shimura. The amount of shit Daiki would have to take care of in the future just because of that moron's absolutely massive fuck-ups was insane. The two most blatant being finding a way to make sure Sasuke didn't go full-on Avenger and want to destroy the Leaf after he eventually found out the truth of the Uchiha massacre and deal with Nagato, or as he called himself now, Pain. Pain who got the better of Sage Mode Naruto even with help. Far from Naruto's strongest form come the end Daiki mused, but monstrous all the same. A simple clone of Naruto in Sage Mode defeated the third Raikage. The third Raikage whom fought Gyuki, the eight-tailed Bijou, to a draw. Even with Isabu backing him up, and the time he had, that was going to be a hell of a level to reach. And all because of fucking Danzo. That wasn't even getting into the fact if he wasn't such an utter clown, the entire Uchiha clan would still be around right now, brainwashed to be loyal, and he'd have the strength of Itachi and Shursui to count on. Now that would be a lineup he could get behind. Daiki himself, Naruto, Sasuke, Itachi, Shursui, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Kakashi, Guy. Granted, Tsunade was a long shot, but with all of them even barring her, Orochimaru wouldn't have dared start his shit like he was doing now. Hell, Sand wouldn't have the balls to either. So yes, when he was keeping track of those watching him and he found Danzo running his mouth about him, Daiki couldn't stop from cutting in and flexing all over the old prick. The oddest thing of it all though, well, one of them at least, was the fact that Danzo backed down after Daiki threatened to cut his head off for back-talking the Hokage and admitting his big plan for making the likes of Stone and Cloud back down if they threatened war if things really did spiral on towards the road of him becoming Hokage. It was a simple, yet incredibly genius stratagem if he did say so himself. Threatened to Bijudama them. After infiltrating the village and letting them know not a single person could sense or find him if he so desired. If he wanted to disappear, there really was nobody that could stop him. And they couldn't stop him from coming and going either, not without bringing down a fully realized Bijou mode perfect Jinchuriki. He'd be showing off a bunch of his cards if it came to it, which he'd rather keep close to the chest, but if it came down to it, he'd do it. He wouldn't allow Ai and Inoki to dig their teeth in and shake him for all they could like they did the Sandaime when the leaf was still recovering and had to play nice. No, he'd just go to the opposite end and go full genocide if he had to. That apparently was something Danzo could get behind though, and he literally retracted complaint about Daiki being in line to be the next Hokage. And wasn't that a bother? With all of the people there in the room during the reveal, including the Hokage's advisors and Danzo, it was pretty much official that he was now being groomed for the Hokage hat. He couldn't take that back now even if he tried. It would be a total bad look for him. So he now had no option but to run straight down that path and make sure Old Man Third lived through the Konoha crush if he didn't want to find himself the leader of the Land of Fire. The workload wouldn't really be a problem with his clones, the big issue was that he wouldn't exactly be able to leave the village much since he would be the leader. Which meant a bunch of things that he couldn't just send others to fetch for him, would be out of his reach. Especially one of the most important of all. The Ryamakyu, the Dragon Veins. A massive source of powerful chakra comparable to a bijou in scope, sealed beneath the ruins of the city Roran in the Land of Rivers, close to the border of the Land of Wind. And for all intents and purposes, what he planned to use to empower Isabu and make him even stronger. So that's what your full big plan is, to make me stronger? You've been tight-lipped about it and even hiding most of your thoughts from me about it. I admit you had me curious, Isabu hummed. Converting all that chakra into my own would take a significant amount of time. Time you would not have to freely spend outside the village as Hokage. Exactly, so unless he got access to a teleportation jutsu like the Flying Thunder God, he was up shit creek without a paddle on that front if the Sandaime died. Well, you could always send an amped clone over there and have it absorb the chakra with your torso armor and the infinite armor and transfer it directly to you, and then you could filter it through to me, Isabu pointed out, though I'm unsure if even the pair of them could handle all of that chakra, and multiple trips might need to be made. Well, that could be an option. And it wasn't like his clones had some limited range they could go from him. After all, they were in a literal separate dimension right now and he still got their memories and chakra if they popped. And he could handle some of the chakra carrying himself thanks to the chakra absorption seal he'd added to the Dimension Force seal. Still being confined to the village would suck absolute donkey cock. And that wasn't a euphemism for his own mighty, epically big dick. And besides, beyond that, there were a bunch of other things he wanted to get his hands on. Like a demonic hydra and its army of 8,000 stone golems that could each tank a Rasengan to the face without trouble. I mean, I could lend my full power to a clone of yours and they would have no issue beating down this Miroku. Isabu pointed out. Daiki grimaced. It would take all the fun out of things though, just sending my clones off to do everything for me. I want to run around, beat up demons, seduce priestesses and princesses and have fun, he burst out, full on whining. Then have an amped clone stay back in the village and you go out, simple as that. Isabu deadpanned. Damn it, this guy had an answer for everything. It's called common sense, though I can understand that being a foreign phrase to you, with you being, well, you. Isabu snorted. Common sense? That sounded like something only a little pansy would lee. There was a knock on the door cutting of Daiki's thoughts and he sighed, cutting off the mental conversation with his inner spirit tortoise. He pushed himself up to land on his feet and made his way over the door. As he expected, someone had come to visit him. Night had fallen now and the other genin had returned to their own assigned rooms. He'd been training for hours at this point. The only question was who? Well, he could just look through the door itself and see, but that would take the fun out of it. Who will it be, he mused, grasping the doorknob. Hinata? Danzo? Old Man Third, Enko maybe? Daiki pulled the door open and blinked at whom he saw. It wasn't anyone he expected at all. A tall cream-skinned sandy blonde with glacial teal eyes, her hair done up in 4 pigtails and adorned in a short pale pink dress with fishnet underneath. Temari of the Hidden Sand. I'm not gonna lie, Daiki said in lieu of greeting, leaning on the doorframe and smirking at the older girl, you are the last person I expected to come visit little old me. Temari glared at him. Were you expecting Gaara instead? She challenged. Ooh, how feisty, Kitty came with her claws unsheathed he saw. Not really actually, but I'd still see Raccoon Boy coming my way before you. Daiki shrugged before taking an idle sweeping glance around with his eyes, peering through the walls all around him. Kankuro wasn't anywhere nearby. In fact, he was downstairs in one of the bathrooms working doing what appeared to be maintenance on his puppets. Weird place to do so, but he wouldn't judge. It seemed Big Sis waited for her little brother to be occupied before slinking away to stealthily confront him. My, how scandalous. Temari grimaced at his words. You know, she uttered those 2 words simply, eyes narrowing even more. Heh, if she compressed her gaze any further she might end up firing beams of chakra at him. Pew pew. Know what? His smirk grew tauntingly. I mean, you'll have to be more specific. I know a lot of things. How to get strong quick, how to taunt like nobody's business, the meaning of the life, the color of your underwear, green looks good on you by the way, how to make a mean protein-filled breakfast that's great for growing muscle. And of course everything about their little plan, more than her even considering she didn't know her father was currently a rotting corpse right now. Or would be soon. Temari's face scrunched up in confusion, completely taken aback by his reply before shaking his head. Don't take me for a fool, besides, you're completely wrong, my underwear is blue, she huffed. His smirk grew to shit-eating proportions. Blue huh, good to know, he nodded. He could have of course just looked through her clothing at any time, but where was the fun in that? It would be way too easy. Temari blinked, suddenly realizing just what he'd gotten her to reveal, but to his surprise, instead of getting angry about it or raging, she sighed and rolled her eyes. You're one cocky smart aleck kid, has anyone ever told you that? She responded, voice dry. Something like that. There's this one Jonin, she's all about me being all cocky, he shrugged. I have no interest in your sex life kid. Temari caught on instantly and rolled her eyes again. Now, may I come in? I want to speak to you about what you were so casually throwing around earlier about me and my siblings. Huh, and here you thought I was hot as shit earlier, Daiki pointed out, but sure, come on in, far be it for me to refuse letting such a pretty girl in my room, however temporary. He pushed off the doorframe and stepped aside, gesturing for her to do so. Temari entered and gave him a real surprised look. How did you know that? She asked, startled. You just told me. He replied smugly. He didn't even need to reveal the fact he read her thoughts earlier for that. Damn Konoha brat. Temari glared at him once more, losing that cool facade she had on her face. Ha! Riling her up would be fun for sure. Temari shook her head and released a deep breath, regaining her cool. And then stopped and stared, confused as she saw the state of his room for the duration of his stay. That being the fact that it was completely empty. What the hell is with your room? Temari looked over her shoulder to give him an odd glance. Did you toss out all of the furniture? I stored it in a ceiling space actually, Daiki informed the sandy blonde. It was getting in the way of training you see, can't let precious time that I can dedicate to the grind go to waste, he explained, and clenched one fist while curling his arm, making his bicep pop out vividly. Big, round and powerful, the fully visible veins trailing down just highlighting the power within these grind-gained muscles. You're training in the middle of an exam? She asked incredulously, but her eyes were locked on his arm, before she managed to drag her gaze away and up to look him in the eyes. Of course I am, you don't expect me to sit around doing nothing like some lazy bum do you? It was Daiki's turn to give her an incredulous stare. Seriously, do you know how much I can get done in 4 days? 4 days was enough to make his physical stats go up by 2. Though, considering how much harder it was making them go up the stronger he got, that may soon go down to 1 and below that even. By his estimates, by time he broke the 400 mark, it would take over a week of high-intensity training just to go up a single physical point, if not more, and it would only get even harder from there. And that wasn't even getting into the fact that with his clones he could master multiple jutsu in just a span of 4 days. As it was though, he needed to take advantage of every single day he had at his disposal, not a single one could be wasted without gaining something from it. Otherwise, by time things really started to roll downhill, he wouldn't be able to keep up at all. Temari raised an eyebrow. Rest is important between training as well, she pointed out, especially with the fact that if this is anything like any other Chunin exams, there will be an exam after this one with full-on head-to-head combat. It could be 1 versus 1 or it could even be team versus team, and I don't think I need to explain which one would be bad for you, being all alone and all. Rest is important for muscle and fatigue and recovering chakra. Daiki nodded in agreement. I'm just built different than your average guy though. I only need a fraction of the time anyone else would need, an hour at best to recover from intense training that would leave you gaping in awe. Hell, technically speaking, he didn't even need to sleep. Ichigo could charge his body at any time and wash away any physical fatigue quite easily. Or at least, he could go massive amounts of time without sleep thanks to that if he so desired. He didn't mind you, mostly because mental fatigue was still a thing that would grind him down and throw him off of his game, and he actually liked sleeping. Especially since he sprung for a really, really comfortable mattress not long ago, and his sheets were such soft lovely silk. Who said only nobles and rich clan punks got to enjoy the finer things in life? Motherfucker, he was the Sanbai Jinchuiki Lord Daiki-sama. As nice as it is that you're so proud of being my Jinchuriki, you're going way off track. Ichigo deadpanned. Oh, right. Nobody likes a braggart. Well, either way it isn't my problem if you screw yourself over in the long run, Temari shrugged, turning away from him and idly glancing over the empty room they were in. Now, enough of the snark and sarcasm, I came here to talk to you for a reason. If you want to see me naked, it'll cost you, he quipped with a snort, eyes tracing over her back. And not actually ogling at the curvature of her hips and the swell of her pert-ass cheeks through that dress of hers. But rather, taking in the folded form of her giant fan. With his eyes, he could see deep into the makeup of the weapon. The metal of it was lined with chakra or wind chakra, or at that, he knew enough to recognize the look of it now since he had a few blades made of the stuff himself, and there were some interesting seals inscribed within it. Shoddy work to be honest, even Orochimaru's hack seal was much higher on the scale, the seal matrix wasn't even locked, but intuitive and quite interesting. From his idle inspection, it seemed that it was a seal to amplify wind chakra. Probably to make up for the fact that only about 30% or so of the fan's metal was wind chakra or. By time Temari turned back around, eyes rolling at his quip, he'd already memorized the seal matrix and made a mental note to improve upon it and edit it to make seals that amplified all the other elements while he was at it. It would make a good reference for deciphering the seal work within the Kiba blades. You know, you're hot kid, I won't lie, but you're not that hot, Temari scoffed. Now, let's stop dancing around the topic. How do you know about my brother? She demanded. Daiki smirked and opened his mouth. Gaara, not Kankuro before you give me the runaround again, she cut him off before he could say anything. Huh, was he that predictable? Or was she just that smart? Guess that joke about his war paint being makeup he stole from Temari herself would have to be sheathed for another time. Well, whatever, ruin is fun, why doesn't she? Who doesn't know about your brother? Daiki rolled his eyes and crossed his arms. Anyone who knows what a Jinchuriki is and is smart knows who the bijou holders are. They were fucking war deterrents for a reason. Killer Bee, Yujido, Han and Rashi were all in the bingo books for fuck's sake. And if Fu was to be believed, she was in the IWA version of the bingo book. She liked to brag about that fact sometimes since he wasn't in any official bingo books. Yet. Hell, your brother is a running joke. Daiki added with a snort. At least to him. A joke? Gaara is a joke? Temari goggled at him, gobsmacked. Of course he is. Daiki barked a laugh, look at the state of him. If there was ever a picture-perfect example of a failure of a Jinchuriki, your little brother would be right on the money. The gobsmack look faded quickly and Temari glared at him hotly. Gaara is the greatest weapon of the hidden sand village. The only person capable of defeating him is our father, the Kazekage. She spat angrily, the disrespect against her little brother bringing out what appeared to be a protective rage. You were bragging to your little leaf friends earlier in the mess hall and throwing little digs at him. Don't think I didn't notice, but you're nothing compared to Gaara. He's near unbeatable. And not someone a mere leaf genin could ever hope to even scratch. The fact he's the greatest weapon of your village while he's so weak is the funniest part of it all. It makes your village look like a giant circus, Daiki shot back, jutting his chin out at her defiantly, egging her on, and your father the Kazekage is the big lead clown, big honking red nose and all, honk honk. You? Temari floundered looking for words to fire back, but the sheer insult he levied at her village, her brother and father all at once stunned her mightily. Where do you get off? I think you'd be better at getting me off hot stuff, Daiki retorted. Besides, you obviously can't tell me you don't see it. You seem like a smart chick. See what? She ground her teeth and commanded him to reveal. Go on, tell me what obvious answer I seem to be missing, you overly horny little fool. He's got it tattooed on his fucking forehead. If that wasn't a cry for help then I don't know what is, he answered with a scoff. Love, your brother's a psycho from sheer loneliness and questioning his worth all his life. That's what happens to kids avoided and treated like a demon all their life. And he is weak, mentally and physically. He relies on the power of his bijou, and that won't do shit against me. Temari didn't reply. Her hands were clenched at her sides so hard they shook and she continued to glare at him, but she had no words to refute him. He could see the realization in her eyes. Course, it isn't your fault, and not your village's either really, Daiki shrugged. Dear old Papa Kazekage is to blame, both for the joke your village has become and the running laugh anyone high up has about your brother being some ultimate weapon. Fucking hell, the twat Raza sent off Bakura to her death, pretty much the strongest ninja of Sunabar himself. The sandy pigtailed blonde grimaced. Your brother is a failure of a Jinchuriki because he doesn't control the power of his bijou, it controls him. Daiki pushed on. Do you know what you need to control the power of a bijou? Willpower. That's it, it's a simple thing, but something your little brother utterly lacks in, because he has nothing, he's utterly alone in the world. As such, he has nothing worth fighting for besides himself. He has no hobbies, he can't sleep because of that trashy seal holding the one tail, and he has nobody to make his life worth living, and because of that, he's only got a fraction of the strength he would have, and like that, he's not even close to a match for me. His words shook Temari so much, the sandy blonde actually stuttered back a step away from him. How do you know all this? She couldn't help but ask in a whisper. It seemed the home truths he dropped on her had rocked her core. Well, she was the one that came here demanding answers over a few taunts and bragging statements. Please, this isn't shocking to know at all, Daiki rolled his eyes. Everyone in your village pretty much knows this, and so any visitor learns it easily, and everyone in the elemental nations knows your father is so pathetic the wind daimyo is coming to Konoha for mission requests. Then again, how can one expect a clown to lead an entire village of tens of thousands when he can't even care for his own damn son? Temari's eyes were horrified for all of a few seconds at his words, before she closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath and centered herself. Annoyingly, your words aren't wrong. I've long been unhappy with Gaara's treatment, and your words have merit behind them, she admitted, and then crossed her arms and stared him in the eye. True as a lot of it has been, Gaara has the full power of the Shikaku at his fingertips and the ultimate defense. You've yet to provide any proof of your strength and ability to beat him, just ran your mouth a lot. Her self-control was quite impressive. If I end up fighting Gaara, I'll gladly prove how much stronger I am than him, Daiki shrugged. Unless that is, you want to make me prove my strength right here and now? In response, Temari smirked. Finally, that's what I came here for in the first place, a little test to see if you're all talk or not. Her hand went up over her shoulder grasping the heavy metal base of her fan, and then in a blur, she pulled it over her shoulder and swung it at him. A single step back made sure it swept right through the area where his face was a moment ago. Oh, not bad. Daiki blinked and found himself complimenting. By his estimates, with how much metal was compressed into that giant fan, and the size of it, it had to be at least 150 pounds in weight, and she swung it around like a light stick at blurring speeds. Temari's eyes narrowed and she said nothing, instead palming the base of the giant fan with her other hand and expertly twirling it like a staff with both hands like a helicopter blade, and lashed out at him in a blindingly fast barrage of melee strikes. She was impressively strong, fast, and skilled in close combat for a long-ranged specialist, that was for sure. Yet, despite that, Daiki barely moved an inch from where he stood as he ducked and weaved around her strikes. He was just that much faster than her and could see the next move coming before she even fully started with it. He also wasn't that nice of a guy that he would let some girl from another village attack him in his own village without consequence. Or in any other village for that matter. He also, for example, could seal his weights away in an instant, becoming 20,000 pounds lighter. He ducked under one strike and then moved. Temari's eyes widened as he outright disappeared from her vision. That was how fast he moved. And then a ripping sound filled the room and Daiki appeared behind her, a familiar pale pink dress in hand. Eyeing her from behind with a smirk on his face. His eyes greedily taking in the sight of her firm, round ass clad in only fishnet. And a powder blue thong that looked ever so delicious on her hips. It took Temari a second to realize what happened and she whirled around, eyes wide in shock. "You, how?" she gaped, not even bothering to cover her front and showing off her near enough fully naked breasts to him, large perky creamy melons topped with cherry pink nipples that poked through the fishnet. "I'm just that fa-" he began answering, eyes on her breasts and memorizing their shape and every contour. He tilted his head to the side as Temari tried to smash his head in with her fan while he was busy answering and ogling her tits. "TCH," she clicked her tongue in annoyance. "Well, you're not shy, that's for sure." Daiki laughed. She literally used his distraction in ogling her and replying to try and smash his head in. Good on her. "I'm a kunoichi, and not one like those little girls you hang around with that would lock up or get embarrassed over a little nudity," Temari huffed, slamming her fan into the ground beside her and leaning on it. "Looks like you're not just all talk, I guess. Not that this little bot was all that impressive. I'm a ninjutsu specialist. I'm just good enough and close to get by." "You know, it's actually not that hard to compliment people," Daiki snorted, like for example, "Hey Temari, you have some really nice tits. They look real soft and I bet would feel real good in my hands." "You'll have to just wonder about that." Temari rolled her eyes and then held out her hand. "Gimme my dress." "How about no?" Daiki countered and lifted it up, idly spinning it in the air above his head. "I think I'll keep it." Temari stared at him for a moment, before huffing, "Whatever, I've done what I came here to do," she replied and boldly turned around and walked towards the door, opening it, not caring at all that she was nude for the most part. She paused just before she stepped out and looked over her shoulder at him. "Keep the dress if you want, it might make your last few dreams memorable before you get crushed by Gaara after needling him like you did. He has his eyes on you now." And then she boldly left the room behind and walked down the hall to her own. Daiki watched directly through the walls as she did. "Ha," he blinked. That was not at all how he expected that to go when he pulled the dress off of her. Granted, she didn't exactly have far to go to get to her room, and nobody was around to see her, especially with her brothers not being in her room. Well, she was interesting. Impressive as her tits and ass were, Daiki found himself more impressed by her mental resiliency. He dropped quite a few bombs of revelation on her and she was, while shocked and overwhelmed initially, was quick to regain her cool. Chucking, he walked over and closed the door, idly examining the dress in his hands. "How fun," he mused. Just then, there was a puff of smoke at his side and Daiki looked up from the pale pink dress in his hands to look over in surprise. When the smoke faded, a familiar pink-scaled chameleon came into view. Though, she was a lot smaller than usual. "Toka?" Daiki blinked in surprise. "Why are you so small?" "Because I felt like it, and obviously I couldn't enter such a narrow space at my full size, no?" Toka replied as if such a thing were obvious. "I wouldn't exactly be very good at stealth and infiltrating at my usual size now, would I?" "You can change your size?" Daiki's eyes widened. That was obvious for sure with her here and now, but it was very interesting to know. A staple of the chameleon clan, though we can only shrink and return to our full sizes, a reverse application of that same jutsu those Akimichi of your village tend to use, Toka shrugged, something you'll no doubt learn in the future, once you can match up to the sensing ability of the whelps of our clan, that is, without relying on those silly eyes of yours. Ha, neat, he could think of so many ways to use that kind of thing. "You jealous you don't have eyes as badass as mine," he taunted her. Toka rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Hardly, unlike you I don't need to rely on a crutch for something so simple," she fired back. "Gah! Right in the pride." Daiki coughed. "So, what's up?" He changed the topic, for no reasons, he just felt like it. 100% truth. Totally. She rolled her ripple-like eyes again, but didn't call him out on it and instead walked over and hopped up onto his shoulder, perching on it comfortably. Right now, she was about 10 inches long at most. "Show me your hand," she ordered him. What a demanding little lizard princess. Daiki did his bid and held up his hand. "So why do you dash?" he began asking, only for his eyes to widen as she opened her mouth and extended her long tongue out and dropped a small glowing green pebble into his palm. "This is," he gaped in shock. "I took the liberty of grabbing the stone you wanted from that ferret, and as you planned, I left behind a small fragment of it within the annoying little beast to keep it alive," Toka explained. "I thought I'd save the trouble of bringing it back here to you than taking it back as you initially intended." Daiki said nothing and just stared in shock at the fragment from the stone of Jello in his hand. Then slowly he started to chuckle, and before long he threw his head back and released a full-bellied laughter that echoed through the room, bouncing off the walls and reverberating ominously. "I see by your demented laugh that you are pleased," Toka commented idly, making him shut up. "Hey, my laugh is powerful and intimidating, not demented," he growled. "You keep telling yourself that," the pink chameleon snorted. "By the way, that clan was a decent challenge to find, though we found them traveling through the land of rivers, and interestingly, not far from them, I came across an odd ancient temple that the old man you told me of seemed to be trying to avoid." Daiki's eyes widened. "Wait, it's not in another continent, it's here," he thought, shocked. "And not only that, but it was in the fucking land of rivers as well? What the fuck? No, seriously, what the hell was up with the land of rivers and all the good shit there? It should seriously be renamed to the land of loot, for crying out loud. This is good." Daiki couldn't help but give out another ominous, not demented laughter. When he got around to having Isabu slurp up the Ryamaku, he could go after the Jello stone veins as well, which should be comparable to the Ryamaku itself as well. With the Ryumaku and the Jello stone veins, could he perhaps not become a match for Kurama? Unlikely, going by your memories. While both together will give me quite the boost, I believe at best, I will gain power comparable to Chome, and as you know, Chome doesn't come close to the power of Kurama. Isabu dashed those hopes. Yeah, Chome got their shit clapped by Kurama, even with Son Goku, Saiken, Kokuo, Matatabi, and Isabu himself backing them up. And that was only half power Kurama. But still, that would be a significant jump in power regardless. And there was always other avenues to explore. For now though, it was time to put some more plans into motion. Such as sealing this fragment of Jello inside his heavenly star seal. Chapter 30. His chakra had changed color again. Originally, cliché as it was, his chakra was a light cyan blue. Also ironic considering he disliked light blue because it gave him headaches in his other life when looking at it too long. It wasn't a bad color really, but he didn't like large swathes of it and preferred it merely for decoration trimming and such. When he became the Jinchuriki of Isabu and his chakra coils became constantly exposed to Isabu's own, his chakra not only became denser, but darked in color, becoming a dark blue. Much more his style. When he gained the curse seal and absorbed all the chakra of Orochimaru's soul fragment, his chakra darkened once more, becoming a royal purple. Which then became an even darker purple after he remodeled the cursed seal into the heavenly star seal. Now though, hours after his meeting with Temari and Toka returned to him, the color of his chakra had radically shifted once more. Now, after sealing the stone or rather fragment of Jello into the heavenly star seal on his shoulder and setting it up in the same way as the star chakra, the color of Daiki's own chakra had shifted into a dark green that seemed to almost border on gray. Timber green actually. Isabu helpfully corrected him as he stood in the middle of his provided bedroom for the next few days, a blaze of chakra covering his hand and examining it in interest. Timber green, huh? Not a bad name for chakra of a leaf ninja. Daiki snorted in amusement. Still, it wasn't like he could complain at all. It wasn't like the change of color in his chakra was a bad thing. Quite the opposite, it had become even more dense and powerful, and on top of that, much easier to control. He supposed that made sense considering that loser Hato learned to control the power from the Stone of Jello extremely quickly after getting a hold of it. And it wasn't just his chakra that felt stronger and easier to control. His body itself felt like it had grown quite a decent bit stronger over the last few hours after he got used to the influx of power from the fragment of Jello. And his healing factor was amped massively as well. He'd slashed his hand not long ago to check and it had sizzled and healed up within seconds. Jinchuriki healing factor plus the regeneration from the fragment of Jello that was a match for Naruto's own in the other timeline, made for a potent combination. Honestly, he was super curious to see how it reflected on his status screen and to see if it had actually increased or if it would even show up at all, because when using his Jinchuriki cloak forms, his status screen never reflected that. It was weird. Still so many questions left unanswered about it. Status, he thought, shaking his head. Name, Daiki Uriai. Age, 13. Chakra capacity, 170,000/170,000, low tier Kage. Strength, 198/. Endurance, 275/. Durability, 197/. Agility, 197/. Taijutsu, 205/500. Ninjutsu, 290/500. Genjutsu, 45/500. Bokijutsu, 120/500. Chakra control, 259/500. Chakra affinities. Lightning, advanced roar with the power of thunder. Water, expert the sea parts before you. Fuinjutsu, advanced the breath hitches. Ha! His chakra capacity had risen nearly 10,000 in the last few days, a decent little jump already from the massive jump he'd gained from his little run-in with Orochimaru. Granted, that wasn't all from the fragment of Jello, the star chakra, Isabu's chakra, and his eyes made sure his chakra capacity was passively growing constantly. And of course he had a bunch of shadow clones training it out right now, which made his chakra capacity grow through training it. Still, even with all that, the growth was noticeable from last night he knew. And beyond that, interestingly, his physical abilities had indeed grown, as had his chakra control apparently. Each had grown by roughly, near 20 points each by his estimation after gaining the fragment of Jello. That was great. That was weeks' worth of training right there. He was close to breaking 200 on most of his physical abilities and closing in on 300 with endurance. Man, I'm a total beast. Daiki grinned as he stared at the status screen. Getting there I suppose, give it a few years and I might allow you to claim as so in truth. Isabu piped in. Daiki blinked, and who made you the beast title police, he asked with a snort. I am a tailed beast, remember? It's in the name. Right now I'm afraid Daiki, you can only claim to be a beast by proxy because of me, not of your own merit, too bad, so sad. Isabu replied, smugly. You know, you were made out to be the nice polite one of you nine, Daiki replied with a pout, all you do is bully me though, he whined. I am the polite nice one, you already know what head cases my siblings are, Isabu retorted, and I'm just doing my civic duty to deflate that ego a bit here and there before it inflates your head so much you fly off to space. Before Daiki could think of something to fire back with, Isabu coughed, anyway, it's not just the power of your chakra and abilities that have increased, you probably can't tell yourself right now, but I am chakra itself given form and your chakra is part of your very life force, the three-tailed bijou brought up. And so what are you getting at? Daiki asked. He already had a pretty good idea of course, since it was perhaps the main reason he actually went for this fragment of Jello, but he couldn't exactly confirm if it was working himself. Isabu apparently could. The energy of Jello, it's not quite chakra, it's more akin to the natural energy being absorbed into your heavenly starseal at a rough guess, though I cannot be fully sure on that part until we actually learn how to sense natural energy, Isabu continued. Still, it is incredibly pure and as it increases your chakra, so too does it enhance your life force. Already through since yesterday, I estimate that your max living age has increased by near a year, 8 months if I had to narrow it down fully, and will increase by that amount daily so long as that fragment in your seal continues to pass its energy to you. That was very good to know. And meant he would recover the lifespan he'd given up with the hero's water, roughly 10 years in just over 2 weeks. 8 months per day, which would be roughly around between 2,900 and 3,000 in a year, which in months would equate to around 120 years. A lot different from how it worked in the other timeline. Perhaps it changed somehow because this was a different universe, maybe? But then, that didn't really make sense either. The full stone is not without its drawbacks. The pure energy, I theorize, gives a mutated form, just like the way the cursed seal does, Which is another reason I'm guessing it is akin to natural energy. Aisabu already had an answer for that as well. Apparently, you are not using the full power of the stone, but rather purifying and filtering its energy into your own, gaining only beneficial traits, if at the cost of some instant strength. In this sense, it is more akin to you drawing from that fragment and making your chakra become Jello chakra itself, a source of its own growing from the ground up. Perhaps in the future your chakra will have innate healing properties to it? That does make sense. After all, I can't feel anything like a transformation coming from my energy. Daiki mused, crossing his arms in thought. And it wouldn't be that hard to draw on and transform if it was anything like the cursed seal. After all, Sasuke could use his level 2 transformation without any training whatsoever just from drawing more on the cursed seal. He wasn't the type to toot his own hoe. Yes, you are. Aisabu deadpanned. But he was pretty damn skilled if he did say so himself. And he had Aisabu backing him up. Between the two of them, if there was a transformation, they'd have found it real quick. Since they hadn't, it made sense Daiki didn't have a transformation coming from the energy. As it should be, the only transformations you need are my forms. Aisabu added. Daiki quite agreed with that. Plus, if he transformed into some weird mutated bat or wolf thing, it would make his chakra cloak and shit look way less epic. Hell, if he gained fur or something, people probably wouldn't even be able to see the badass tattoos he got from his heavenly star seal. Wait. What about Sage Mode? Daiki asked. That is less a transformation and more an augmentation of your base form. It gets a pass. Bijou Sage Mode is definitely something we should acquire in the future if we can. Aisabu replied. Phew. Also, by the way, your math was totally off. In a year you would accumulate 243 years worth of life force. The huge tortoise Bijou then added on, you should slow down a bit when calculating in your head. Then again, I suppose you even managing simple times tables is a massive feat considering all your brain power revolves around your precious grind and figuring out how to punch harder. Hey! Daiki narrowed his eyes. You can insult me all you want, buddy. I know you love me really, but watch your tone when talking about the most holy lifestyle. Ugh, the worst of it is, you actually do pretty much worship it, Aisabu groaned. Konoha better hope the Sandaime Hokage survives this little invasion coming up, otherwise they'll find themselves as a whole forced into an all-new religion and possible cult. Daiki opened his mouth to reply, before pausing. That's not actually a bad idea, he mused. Aisabu shut up instantly. Yeah, I like it. If I become Hokage, I'll make the grind mandatory for all ninja and ninja in training, really boost the performance of my ninja minions. Daiki nodded to himself. That way they'll be way more useful in the future instead of just fodder I'll have to waste energy protecting if things spiral into a big ol' war like they did in the other timeline. I should practice what I preach and watch what I say. Aisabu groaned in defeat. Are you quite done? Toka's voice broke him out of his mental conversation. Daiki looked over to the opposite end of the room, where a single bed sat pressed up against the wall and a familiar pink-scaled chameleon lay resting atop his pillow in her shrunken form. More or less, he shrugged. He wasn't actually sure why she had stuck around. Generally, whenever she had finished a task for him or finished training with him, she disappeared off back to her homeland. Good, she nodded simply. I must say, watching your face shift through such a variety of ridiculous expressions was rather nauseating. At one point you even had a rather horrid grin on your face that would not look at all out of place on the face of a serial killer. Ouch. I am a serial killer, he deadpanned at her. He'd honestly lost track of how many people he'd killed, but he was betting it was over 100 by this point at least. Bandits were absolute clowns that never learned. Even when doing minor D-rank missions outside the village, it wasn't that rare to run into a few of them. They were like roaches, to be honest. They weren't at all a threat, but just when you think you had stamped them out, a few more popped up out of the tracks and loitered around the forests looking for travelers. Which never really worked out well for them, cause they tended to get swatted by any passing shinobi if they came across them. Slightly true I suppose, though there is a difference, Toka mused lazily. Still, I advise you not to show faces like that around the female population. You will surely be unable to attract a mate while wearing such a ghastly expression. Trust me, I have no problems on that front. Daiki rolled his eyes. Well, maybe. Granted, he was lacking entirely on the romance front and only had a booty call and a hot older woman offering to bang him if he did something epic for her. Even Naruto and Sasuke had actual girls interested in romance and a proper relationship and love with them. Gah! How depressing. So is there a reason you're still hanging around? Daiki asked, shaking his head and putting those thoughts out of mind before he got so depressed he started listening to country ballads and songs about heartbreak, then busted out the tubs of ice cream. Is it a problem for you that I'm still here? Toka asked instead of answering the question. Nah, I like having you around despite how much of a bitch you are to me, he shrugged, just curious since you tend to split when you feel like you've done what you needed to. Perhaps I wouldn't be so much of a bitch as you so crudely put it if you were not such an incompetent musclehead? Toka rolled her ringed eyes. As for why I am here, I have no duties currently within the clan and have some free time, and soon you shall be participating in a competitive bout, no? I thought to stay around and see the great Chameleon clan's chosen summoner show his power off to others for a bit and enjoy myself. Also, she added before he could say anything else and narrowed her eyes at him seriously, you had a run-in with the main summoner and contract holder of the Snake Clan. Father wishes to keep an eye on the situation, just in case grandfather is brought into battle against you. Ha, that was right, wasn't it? Manda was actually her grandfather. Honestly, it was quite the pedigree, the daughter of the one who would become one of Pain's main summons and the granddaughter of the personal summon beast of the Snake Sannin. Fair enough, feel free to stick around as long as you want, Daiki shrugged. Personally, he wasn't all that fussed about the snake summons, chameleons were clearly superior. Actually, that reminds me, I gave another search mission to your clan to find something for me near 2 days ago. How is that dash? The Uchiha corpse, yes? Toka cut him off, we already found it. You already had the location for it after all. We have been keeping a hold of it for now since you were busy and we did not want to just leave it at your estate. Daiki's eyes widened. You found it, he gasped, a massive grin spreading across his face. Chameleons seriously were the best, no doubt. Yes, though it is in a very poor state, Toka shrugged her scaly shoulders, it hasn't decomposed too much, but it has been partially eaten by the aquatic wildlife within the Naka River and what is left of the corpse is quite waterlogged, and beyond that, it lacks eyes as well. I have no idea why you wanted it, to be honest. Without the Sharingan the corpse of an Uchiha is rather useless. You let me worry about that, Daiki waved her off, can you bring it here? I suppose, give me a moment. Toka agreed and a second later, disappeared in a puff of smoke. Daiki wasn't waiting long. A mere minute at most passed before another puff of smoke signified the return of Toka. She was prudent like that. When the smoke dissipated, it was to show Toka still in her miniature form, standing beside a bloated, soaking piece of flab. Daiki grimaced. For all intents and purposes, Shisui Uchiha had been a pretty handsome guy. From what he remembered, he had the pretty boy looks of a typical Uchiha, yet at the same time, his features were more masculine than say Sasuke. Now, he, or rather was left of him, looked more like a fat, bloated tumor of skin that seemed to leak a disgusting watery substance from each and every pore. And that wasn't even getting into the fact that there were tons of great big rents in the body all over the surface, as if tons of creatures had taken to nibbling on it from time to time. It was a wonder it hadn't just become a skeleton at this point. But then, Shisui was just built different from your typical person, he was near an S-class shinobi when he died. His body was just that much tougher than an average person, that it was taking longer for his body to decay. Still, it wasn't exactly a pretty sight. And it was a horrible look for such a cool guy. I still do not understand what good this body will do you, Toka mused, casting it an indifferent glance, unless you've went all mad scientist like the snake contract holder and planned to clone this Uchiha. No, nothing like that, Daiki replied, eyes on the corpse. His scarlet red eyes glowed and he looked into the body itself, taking in the contents of it. Damn, it wasn't half waterlogged now, was it? That would have to go. Do you remember what I told you about my infinite armor? He asked, crouching down over the body and pressing his hand over it. He focused, spreading his chakra through the body and drew the water within the corpse to it. He'd already long since learned what he needed to do when using raw life force to repair a body. The contents of those 4 clowns' technique to revive their master Simi had been explained to him from his lute. In the process of regenerating the body, it would flush out all impurities that had taken root, including the likes of insects and such that had infested the body. Still, there had to be a dozen gallons of water stuffed inside this corpse. Eesh. It was a wonder it hadn't just popped, but then he could attribute that to Shirsue's strength before death as well, he supposed. Just in case he'd draw the water out. Yes, absorbing chakra and converting it into life force, how could I forget when it has such a silly name? Toka snorted and rolled her ringed eyes, then walked over to hop up onto his shoulder and lay down, observing what he was doing. Yeah, Daiki grinned faintly as he guided the water in the corpse up and out of one of the great big rents in the corpse's flesh. While I lack the revival jutsu itself that will pull a soul from the afterlife, using life force, I can do what they wanted, and way better than those guys thanks to my eyes. In fact, the jutsu used for the life force transference itself wasn't really a jutsu, but rather just a function of the infinite armor. A seal. A seal he'd long since cracked. Knew the functions of, and could do better with his eyes. Especially in conjunction with perhaps his most used jutsu of all. And what was it they hoped to accomplish? Toka asked, some form of revival jutsu, like your village's Edo Tensei? Figures you guys would know about that as well, Daiki snorted, but yeah, along those lines. Basically, with enough life force, it's possible to regenerate a corpse that is little more than a skeleton, back to perfectly healthy and alive. I see. Toka said simply and nothing else. Ever the composed lizard lady, huh? She was silent for a moment as he worked, digesting what he said before. You wish to regenerate the Sharingan and take it for your own, then? Toka questioned a moment later, hitting the nail right on the head. Pretty much. Daiki nodded. The Sharingan is a powerful tool for sure, but why? Do you plan to replace those eyes you have now, the Shinkigen you call them? She asked next. I would advise against it. The overall abilities, especially the sensory-linked ones and the fact they enhance your analytical ability outweigh the benefits of the Sharingan in my opinion. Don't worry, I'm not giving up the Shinkigen, it's way better than the Sharingan, Daiki assured her. I simply plan to fuse the Sharingan with my Shinkigen with Fuinjutsu, I just haven't gotten around to making the seal yet. It hadn't exactly been a top priority so far. He already had a rough idea how he would do it, mind you, with the 4 symbols seal, the chakra filter seal and some of the applications of his improved heavenly star seal. And how will you go about that, I wonder? Toka hummed, and in his peripheral vision he saw her lips stretch into a taunting grin. Do you plan to pull out your eyes to physically inscribe the seals on them? Daiki said nothing. Toka's eyes widened. Truly, she gasped, before erupting into laughter. My goodness. You are truly a buffoon that will do anything to grow stronger. Though, an amusing buffoon at least. Daiki resisted the urge to tell her that there was a fine line between something being stupid and something being genius. It was whether it worked or not. But he would just let his work be all the proof he needed and show her. Later when he actually got it done. Still, he did toy with the idea of making a seal around his eyes, connecting to his temples rather than the eyes themselves. But, he figured that would weaken the connection and it would be stronger if he fused them together. And actually could lead to a better result. If he sealed the finished product to his genome. Making it truly part of his bloodline and able to be passed down. That was something that would take a lot longer to complete though. He wasn't quite good enough to pull something like that yet. He shook his head as the last droplet of water came free, swerving up to join the rest, forming into a large sphere of water nearly as tall as he was that was idly floating in the air under his control. He was really getting good at the water manipulation these days. Improving every day, every second, even considering he had clones training with it right this very moment. Right, let's get this show on the road then, Daiki said a few moments later, after dumping the water down the plug hole of the shower provided to his room, once again crouching down over the body, which was now all still a lump piece of meat, now much slimmer. He made a single hand seal, mystical palm jutsu, he intoned, familiar warm green healing chakra forming around his hands. And then he focused and drew upon the massive quantities of life force stored within the infinite armor. Beyond absorbing any chakra going his way, Ichigo was constantly adding chakra to it himself, and by his counting, in sheer volume, they had stored enough chakra to rival that of his two-tailed sibling, Matatabi. His eyes began glowing, so bright the room was cast in a deep red glow, and he molded the life force into his hands. The soft warm green aura of his mystical palm jutsu turned a pure gleaming sliver and he pressed his hands down atop Shirsue's body and let loose, directing the pure healing life force into the corpse. And instantly, before his very eyes, he watched as time itself seemed to rewind rapidly for the body. The bloated skin shrinking, tightening, going from soggy pale gray to warm creamy skin, the rents all over the body healed, filling in, teeth reformed, the bloated skull and face shrunk and molded back into proper shape, a handsome black-haired teen just a few years older than Daiki staring back at him, with empty eye sockets. By his counting, he'd already directed a tenth of the total gathered life force, amplified by his eyes and the mystical palm jutsu into the body. What the? Keep going. Isabu urged him before he could falter. Power requires power, and the Sharingan, especially this one's, isn't so easily restored from nothing, especially considering this one's eyes still exist. That didn't make sense at all. Isabu was sure, for instance, Daiki himself could regenerate a lost lung rather easily. So would that mean if somebody just tore his lung out, and kept it in their hand and didn't destroy it, it would make it harder for Daiki to regenerate? Just keep going. I admit, I do not know everything, but eyes such as these are special, they require you to go further. Isabu replied. How cryptic. And stupid. Really, what was up with the fucking bullshit around the Sharingan that even the laws of the universe apparently made it harder to regenerate them just because? He pushed even more life force into Shursue's body. Yet still, nothing formed in his eyes. He tripled the output. Soon he'd expanded life force equal to Shikaku, the one-tailed bijou in chakra, by Isabu's estimates, which had been enough to fully revive Simi and pull him from the afterlife. There was a glimmer within eye sockets, small white flakes forming over the optic nerves within. Aura! Daiki roared and went full in. He pushed every little bit of life force stored within the infinite armor out, amplified it by his eyes and directed it into the body with the mystical palm jutsu. And then he went a step further and went even further beyond. He drew on his own chakra, converting almost the entirety of his own chakra capacity into life force, and added it on, chakra comparable to that of a Kage converted into life force just to top it off. He was using so much chakra, his own and beyond, spots started dancing in his vision and he began teetering from side to side almost drunkenly. And then all of a sudden, the flow cut off entirely. There was nothing else left beyond his very own life force, and Daiki found himself toppling backwards in a dead faint. Chakra, exhaustion, he realized blearily. The back of his head smashed into the hard tile floor of the room, yet Daiki didn't even have the strength left to wince. Toka of course easily and casually left off of his shoulder before he hit the ground, not even bothering to stop him. Truly a buffoon, she snorted while he lay there and stared up at the ceiling, or rather as much of the ceiling as he could see, since most of his vision was filled with spots and blotting most of it out of view. A competent buffoon, I suppose, though. It seems your efforts were not in vain. Daiki gave a slow blink. Did it work? He thought hazily. A second later, the numbness that had befell his body began to fade away as a familiar dense, powerful chakra flowed into his coils, rejuvenating him, giving him strength enough to push himself up to his hands and knees. His limbs still shook mightily with the struggle of it, and even with Isabu it would take a little bit before the effects of chakra exhaustion totally faded, but for now he could move. He turned his head and looked at the corpse, and a grin began to spread across his face. The perfectly restored body of Shursuke Uchiha lay staring up at the ceiling just like he had been before, eyes wide open, crimson-red Sharingan eyes with three tomo gazing blankly upwards. He'd done it. And all it took was chakra comparable to the two-tailed bijou, amplified by a bullshit jujitsu of his own. Daiki grinned in victory, before collapsing backwards again onto the ground and just laying there, basking in the moment. Never again, he vowed. Well, I wouldn't say never. It may be possible to make an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan if you have two pairs of the same set of eyes, Isabu interjected, but I do believe it will be a long time coming. The amount of life force you used for this would truly come in handy in a pinch if we were ever in over our heads. As it is, it will take us months to gain that amount of chakra again, and that is assuming we do not get into any battles that force me to exhaust my chakra to keep us alive in the meantime. Daiki grimaced. Yeah, he hadn't at all thought it would take that much life force to just regenerate Shursue's body. Not even close. For reference, that amount of chakra turned into life force was easily enough for you to live 1,000 years lifespan-wise. Isabu added. Fucking Sharingan. That wraps up this part of What If Reborn in Naruto World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Just a quick reminder. The story What If There Was a Different Luffy is going on hold soon as we have almost caught up with the author. So once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the next project should be here on the channel. I'm currently considering these 3 fanfics. What if Ichigo awoke his true powers? What if becoming a mangaka in One Piece world? What if Reborn as Gohan in future timeline? Let me know which one you'd like to see next by voting in the poll. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.